Chapter 810. After listening to Feng Qiuhuang's narration, Ouyang Shuo regained his composure. Silver Hand? It's getting more and more interesting. Ouyang Shuo actually smiled, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. Previously, Ouyang Shuo was still worried that if Shanghai City caused too much of a commotion in the game, the achievement points he would receive after arriving at Hope Planet would exceed the limits of some people. If that happened, would someone cheat and declare the achievement points of Earth on Lu invalid? It was not impossible. It was like a person going to the casino to gamble. If he won more than the casino could bear, he should consider whether he could leave the casino with dignity instead of thinking of earning more money. After all, no matter how much money he had, he needed to be alive to spend it. What do you plan to do? Feng Qiuhuang asked. Ouyang Shuo smiled and casually looked up at the sky. He said pointedly, "What else can I do? Naturally, I'll obediently join the academic faction and find a big tree to shelter me from the wind and rain." Just as he finished his sentence, Ouyang Shuo acutely sensed a white light flash in the sky. When Feng Qiuhuang saw it, a glint flashed in his eyes as he fell into deep thought. Since Gaia was on the academic faction side, Ouyang Shuo believed that his words would be understood by Gaia and passed on to the academic faction's leader. No one's every move in the game could escape Gaia's eyes. However, Gaia had to abide by the 3 laws of robotics. Without authorization, it could not divulge a player's privacy. Ouyang Shuo's actions were a form of authorization. Since he could not contact the academic faction, it was naturally appropriate for Gaia to pass on the message. From the looks of it, Silver Hand could not cover the sky with one hand. It still had a powerful opponent, the academic faction. Ouyang Shuo did not mind temporarily joining the academic faction and becoming their lackey. Trying to form a faction when he was not strong enough was tantamount to striking a rock with an egg. Ouyang Shuo had been tempered in the wilderness and was no longer a childish idealist. With the academic faction backing him, Ouyang Shuo could fight against Silver Hand with peace of mind. The future Hope Planet was the opportunity for Ouyang Shuo to truly break free from the shackles of the 2 factions and grow freely. Only on the planet could Ouyang Shuo truly establish his foundation. If he only focused on the game, he was destined to be a rootless tree. Who knew that at this moment, Ouyang Shuo's horizons would rise to a completely new height? Not only was he plotting in the game, but he was also making all sorts of preparations for the future Planet Hope. The game couldn't affect reality. However, the people who played the game were all real people. Since they were people, they could affect reality. Feng Wu, thank you so much, Ouyang Shuo said sincerely. Feng Qiuhuang smiled sweetly and said, "We are friends." Ouyang Shuo nodded and looked at each other with a smile. The two chatted for another hour or so before Feng Qiuhuang stood up and bade farewell. When Feng Qiuhuang was about to step into the teleportation formation, Ouyang Shuo suddenly said, "Feng Wu, don't be afraid. You're not alone." When he saw Feng Qiuhuang this time, Ouyang Shuo could clearly sense that she had something on her mind. However, when they were chatting, Feng Qiuhuang would always hesitate, not knowing where to start. Ouyang Shuo thought that Feng Qiuhuang might have encountered the same predicament as him. The road was dark and cold. Ouyang Shuo couldn't bear to let such an extraordinary lady travel alone. Feng Qiuhuang's body trembled. After a long time, she turned around and gave Ouyang Shuo a bright smile. "I won't be afraid anymore." Ouyang Shuo smiled back and thought, "Congratulations, my friend." While Ouyang Shuo was meeting Feng Qiuhuang, a huge net had already been secretly unfolded. Pacific Ocean, Hawaiian Islands. On the vast ocean, a second-class sailing battleship had just finished resting in Hawaii and was once again on its voyage, braving the winds and waves as it headed for Japan. The force system update that had just ended not only increased the movement speed of the Army, but the speed of the battleship had also been increased, making long-distance sailing much easier. The battleship had set off from the west coast of Marika and arrived at Hawaii, which was located in the center of the Pacific Ocean, in less than 5 days. In another week, the battleship would arrive at Japan. The Statue of Liberty hung on the battleship indicated that it was a battleship that belonged to Marika's Liberty City. Two middle-aged men stood on the deck, one scholarly and the other military. From their demeanor, they should be the core members of the battleship. "Sir Clerk, why do we have to travel thousands of miles to deliver precious technical manuals to the Japanese?" The one who spoke was a military officer who was also the captain of the battleship. He was wearing a standard Western military uniform and had a dueling sword at his waist, as well as a Western flintlock pistol. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The military officer was the clerk of Liberty City. He had a high status and power, so he appeared much calmer. He wore a double-horn hat on his head and held an exquisite walking stick in his hand. Coupled with his slightly curled mustache, he looked very unique. This time, they were ordered by the feudal lord to deliver 3 sets of the most precious technical manuals of Liberty City to the feudal lords of Japan and China at the low price of 1 million gold coins. The goods included the manufacturing technology for steam engines, looms, and sailing battleships. The only thing that Liberty City retained was their core firearm manufacturing technology. The clerk did not know the inside story of this matter. When a feudal lord gave this task to him, he was filled with doubts like the captain. However, in front of the military officer, he naturally had to act like he knew the inside story. Otherwise, how could he show that he had a close relationship with the feudal lord? The captain really thought there was some inside story and did not dare to inquire further. He smiled and changed the topic. Speaking of which, this was the first time the Liberty City fleet had crossed the Pacific Ocean. It was of great significance. Japan, Mikasa City. Keisuke Honda read the secret letter that Jack Dawson had written to him. He was full of smiles and was in a very good mood. As a traditional ally of the United States in Asia, even after the formation of the Federation, the Japanese followed the footsteps of the Americans within the Silver Hand and served them all the way. Of course, the Japanese did not return the favor. Just like this technology authorization, on the surface, Mikasa City was the same as Handan City and other territories in the China region. They only received 3 kinds of technical manuals. But there were other mysteries in the dark. Not only did Jack send more than 100 related technical personnel to Mikasa City, but he also prepared 1,000 firearms in the cabin and gave them to Mikasa City. In this way, Mikasa City could be one step ahead of the Yinwang Alliance. Keisuke Honda was already fantasizing about leading the fleet to loot the coast of the China region. France, Vic City. Henry sat in his office, reading a letter word by word. The letter was sent by the Silver Hand, hinting that Vic City should not be too close to Shanghai City in the affairs of the Mediterranean Sea. If possible, it was best to cut off the supply of supplies to the Bay City. After reading the letter, Henry's expression was uncertain. He finally seized the opportunity to join forces with Shanghai City to drive the Spanish fleet out of the Mediterranean Sea, allowing Vic City's fleet to gain valuable sea control and gain huge profits from the ocean trade. Who would have thought that such a change would happen? Without the assistance of the Mediterranean Sea fleet, Henry was not sure that he could defeat the Spanish fleet. Not to mention the newly rising Caesar. Not only was it aggressive on the European continent, but it also recently formed a naval fleet with the intention of getting involved in the Mediterranean Sea. The situation in the entire Mediterranean Sea suddenly became complicated and confusing. Spain, Tortosa City. Casillas also received a secret letter from the Silver Hand, but compared to Henry, Casillas's expression was very different. He looked happy, and his eyes flashed with the light of revenge. "This is great. I finally have a chance to get revenge for the last time." After more than half a year of dormancy, the Spanish fleet had been rebuilt, but due to the existence of the Mediterranean Alliance, they did not dare to go to sea easily. The sudden intervention of the Silver Hand gave the Spanish a great opportunity. England, Avic Castle. As a core member of the Silver Hand, William naturally would not receive any warnings. After all, this Silver Hand was just a loose, mysterious organization, and there was no mandatory binding force on its members, especially the powerful core members. Whether to carry out the organization's instructions or not, and how to carry them out, were all up to them. Compared to Henry's Vic City, William's Avic Castle and Shanghai City had deeper interests. As the starting and ending points on the Grand Line, the two cities had the biggest profits. It was impossible for William to give up this fat piece of meat. William even used the silver hand to draw a bottom line for the members of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea could be chaotic, but must not affect the merchant ships passing through the Mediterranean Sea. At the same time, Sky City. Sky City was not only the residence of Gaia, but also the leisure place of the Federation president and other bigwigs. In a small courtyard in the west of the city, there was a two-story wooden White House. There was a garden in front and back of the house, with all kinds of exotic flowers and grasses in bloom, and countless colorful butterflies and bees came and went among the flowers. The lawn of the garden was taken care of extremely beautifully, and it was obvious that the owner of the house was a thoughtful person, and he had extraordinary taste. On the lawn, an old man in plain clothes was bending over to water a pot of roses, looking serene and focused. Who would have thought that this inconspicuous old man was the leader of the academics, the dignified Federation president? Behind the old man stood a beautiful woman with a cold expression. If there were players present, they would be obsessed, because this woman was the incarnation of Gaia, the most beautiful woman in human history. After waiting for a while, the old man finally turned around, put down the sprinkler in his hand, looked at the beautiful woman, and asked gently, "Did he really say that?" Yes. Gaia was still expressionless. The old man didn't care and said with a smile, "What an interesting little friend. Do you need to respond to him?" The old man waved his hand and said, "Not for the time being. Let's see how he gets through this first." Understood. With that, Gaia turned into a white light and disappeared. The old man picked up the sprinkler again and went to take care of his treasures. Chapter 811. February 10th, 12th of the first month, Southwest University China Hall. On Meteor Island by the full moon lake. What used to be a barren island was now covered in green and beautiful grass after great-grandfather took care of it. The only thing that didn't change was the small wooden house on the island and the bamboo forest in front of it. Although it was winter, it wasn't cold in Shanghai City. Meteor Island was especially warm because of the geothermal heat. The bamboo forest was green and green. The fresh bamboo that Bing, fed Chi came from this small bamboo forest. Under the bamboo forest, there was a game of Go. Ouyang Shuo and great-grandfather sat opposite each other, playing Go with the wind. The Southwest University China Hall was on the right track. The daily affairs were handled by the vice president and the deans. Jiang Shang didn't need to worry about it. Ouyang Shuo put down a black chess piece and suddenly asked, "Great-grandfather, are you willing to help me?" The establishment of the cabinet had been discussed in the territory. In principle, the cabinet would have one prime minister and 6 vice ministers. It could be adjusted according to the specific situation. Ouyang Shuo would decide who the cabinet would be. Xiaohe and the other ministers thought that it would be best to ask Jiang Shang to take the position of prime minister. There were 2 reasons. First, great-grandfather was highly respected. Second, he used to be a grand preceptor. He had both integrity and talent. Integrity and talent was also a hard requirement to select a cabinet member. Ouyang Shuo had the same idea. Therefore, he visited Meteor Island again. Jiang Shang wasn't surprised. He put down a white chess piece. His move was much better than Ouyang Shuo's. The white chess piece was about to take shape and trap the black chess piece. "I'm old. I'm afraid I've let you down." Ouyang Shuo also smiled. Great-grandfather's inner breath is long and continuous, and his body is full of vitality. How can he be called old? The biggest difference between the game and history was that there were authentic martial arts manuals. Although Jiang Shang's cultivation wasn't as amazing as an investiture of the gods, he was still a Taoist. His internal energy cultivation was no less than Ouyang Shuo's. Gaia had spent a lot of effort to create these saint-level characters. How could he let them be defeated by time? Great-grandfather's old was just his skin. When a saint-level character transformed into a biohuman in the future, his physical fitness would be the strongest. Jiang Shang smiled. Jian Shang's eyes are like a torch. This old man cannot refuse. Ouyang Shuo had gone through 1,000 hardships and finally managed to invite this saint-level character out of the sect. Name, Jiangshang Saint Tier. Title, Martial Sage, Master the 100 Schools Dynasty. Western Zhou Identity, Principal of Southwest University China Hall. Profession, Unparalleled State Knight. Loyalty, 85 Commander, 88 Strength, 75 Intelligence, 98 Politics, 100 Specialty, Governance. Increases territorial administrative efficiency by 55. Increases territorial political index by 15. Increases territorial military index by 15. Increases territorial popular sentiment by 45. Classic. The Six Secret Arts Evaluation. Tai Gong Wang, Qi Zhu Fu, Zhao Zhu Tu, Ziliang Zhu Fu, Ji Jin Qi, Wen Wang. Tai Gong Wang governed the country. Because of its customs, it simplified its etiquette. Through trade and industry, it benefited from fish and salt. Many people returned to Qi, making Qi a great country. The attributes of a saint-level character were indeed overbearing. Even his profession was a customized version of Unparalleled State Knight. Jiangshang's four-dimensional attributes were the same as Sun Wu's. He had no shortcomings, and his politics attribute was full points. Unlike Sun Wu, Jiangshang had officially become an official, and his specialty was finally revealed. Governance, as specialty, was too overbearing. Out of the four attributes, two of them directly increased the territory index. The whole thing was an all-around improvement. After checking the attributes, Ouyang Shuo laughed heartily. Even his chess pieces became lighter. Jiangshang followed suit and smiled. Jiangshang, you've lost. People should not be too complacent. In the blink of an eye, the black pieces were trapped and could not move. I admit defeat. Ouyang Shuo gave up and surrendered. Looking at a corner of the chessboard, he saw a black piece surrounded by more than 10 white pieces. It seemed that there was no chance for it to break out. He took the opportunity to ask, Grandpa, if Shanghai City is this black piece and the enemy is this group of white pieces, how should we break out of this situation? Ouyang Shuo thought of the encirclement and suppression of Shanghai City by the Silver Hand. Jiangshang knew that the Jiangshang must be referring to something. He had long seen that the Jiangshang was different from before. He seemed to have something on his mind and seemed to have encountered some troublesome matters recently. Please enlighten me, Jiangshang. Since Jiangshang had agreed to become an official, he would not be stingy with his wisdom. Ouyang Shuo nodded and explained in detail about the Silver Hand. Jiangshang pondered for a moment and slowly said, the Jiangshang chose to side with the academics and take advantage of its power. This is not wrong. However, this is not enough. Even if you're a chess piece, you must be a chess piece that will not be easily abandoned by the player. Once the player abandons a chess piece, the game will be lost. In this way, the chess piece and the player can rely on each other for fortune and misfortune. What does Grandpa mean? Jiangshang asked. Who is the opponent of the Silver Hand? The academics? No. Jiangshang shook his head and said, no one can guarantee that after the academics defeated the Silver Hand, they will not become the next Silver Hand. It is a battle of ideas and also a battle of interests. The real opponent of the Silver Hand is the hundreds of millions of ordinary mutants. As long as the Jiangshang can unite a large number of ordinary mutants and tie their interests with the interests of Shanghai City, you will be invincible. When that time comes, even if the academics wanted to abandon a chess piece, it would be impossible. Ouyang Shuo's eyes lit up and said, just like the Bank of the Four Seas? Jiangshang nodded and said, yes, the Bank of the Four Seas is in line with this principle. However, this is far from enough. Since the Jiangshang wants to achieve great things, you should show the magnanimity that an emperor should have. Learn to accept and control mutants instead of shutting them out. I understand. Ouyang Shuo's eyes were firm. Jiangshang nodded with a smile on his face. All right. Ouyang Shuo suddenly thought of something and asked, regarding the matter of the name of the country, do you have any opinions? After a few days of discussion, The mainstream opinion was to inherit one of the three ancient names, Xia, Shang, and Zhou. The reason was that the names of the spring and autumn warring states period were too strong, such as Qin and Jin, which already had owners. The remaining names were somewhat lacking and did not deserve to be the first country to be established in the wilderness. Only three ancient names could bear the weight, and there was still disagreement as to which one to choose. The Xia dynasty was the first hereditary dynasty recorded in China's history books, and it was also the starting point of the concept of a country. Xia meant people of China. The saying of Huaxia originated from the Xia dynasty. Xia evolved from the place of having Xia residents and Great Xia to the name of a tribe and then became the name of a country. Of course, by now, the house that people lived in had evolved into the word mansion, which was different from the word Xia. It was said that the founder of the Xia dynasty, the Xia clan, was a descendant of the Zhuangqiu tribe. It was a tribe formed by the intermarriage of the Zhuangqiu clan, a descendant of the Yellow Emperor, and the Gangang clan, a descendant of the Yan Emperor. Because the Xia dynasty was the starting point, it was in line with Shanghai City's position as the first country to be established in the wilderness. Therefore, most people supported inheriting the name of the country. The Shang dynasty was the first dynasty to have written records of the same period, and it was at the peak of slavery. There was also a Shang cauldron placed in the heaven altar of Shanghai City, which could be considered a trace of origin. The ancestor of the Shang dynasty, Qi, had helped you control the flood and was granted the title of Shangyi. Thus, the name of the country was chosen as Shang. Qi was the son of Emperor Ku, the great-grandson of the Yellow Emperor, and one of the 5 emperors. Therefore, the Shang clan was also a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. However, the Shang dynasty was located in the middle of the 3 ancient dynasties, neither superior nor inferior, so it had very few supporters. The Zhou dynasty was the last hereditary slave dynasty, and it was also the birthplace of the 100 schools of thought, so it had a deeper relationship with Shanghai City. Therefore, many people supported this name. If Shanghai City inherited the name of the country, there would immediately be a group of talented people. The Yellow Emperor lived in Jishui, taking Ji as his clan, and the people of Zhou took his surname. The people of Zhou were forced by the Xuanyu Rong to leave their homeland. They went through many hardships and crossed Qi, Zhu, and Liang mountains to move to Zhou Yuan, south of Qi Mountain in the Wei River Valley. Thus, the concept of Zhou was born. The word Zhou was originally written as upper field, lower mouth, upper and lower combined. Later, it evolved into the word Zhou. However, the Zhou dynasty was actually Western Zhou and Eastern Zhou. During the spring and autumn warring states period, when the 100 schools of thought were born, the Zhou dynasty's existence became weaker and weaker. Just this point alone was not enough to make the final decision. The 3 ancient dynasties were all descendants of Yin and Huang, and they could all represent the orthodoxy. Even Ouyang Shuo was currently hovering between Xia and Zhou. Jiang Shang's expression suddenly became somewhat complicated. After a long time, he said, "I once helped Zhou destroy the Shang and was deeply involved. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, it is best that I do not participate. As for the choice, it is up to you, Lord." Ouyang Shuo nodded, seeming to understand what Jiang Shang meant. Ouyang Shuo suddenly remembered that during the Battle of Mai, King Wuwang of Zhou had indirectly died in his hands. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo felt his hair stand on end. Ouyang Shuo shook off the thoughts in his mind and asked one last question. Great-grandfather is going to take up a post in the imperial cabinet. Does the academy have a candidate to recommend? Southwest University China Hall was one of the foundations of the territory, and it was also the gathering place of the 100 schools of thought. With Jiang Shang gone, Ouyang Shuo could not just randomly find someone to replace him. Otherwise, there would be trouble. Jiang Shang, however, already had a candidate in mind. He said Kong Qiu is fine. Ouyang Shuo was greatly surprised. Old Master Kong is willing to come out of seclusion? If it was Confucius who replaced Jiang Shang as the principal of Southwest University China Hall, there would be no problem at all. However, Confucius was obsessed with the reconstruction of Confucianism, so it would not be easy to invite him. Don't worry, Lord. This old man will personally invite him. Ouyang Shuo smiled. That couldn't be better. With Jiang Shang, who was half a teacher to Confucius, there would not be any problems. This could also be considered as relieving one of Ouyang Shuo's worries. Seeing that it was already late, Ouyang Shuo stood up to bid farewell. Tomorrow, I will respectfully await great-grandfather's arrival at the Protectorate Manor. He wanted to discuss the future structure of the dynasty with Jiang Shang, Xiao He, and the others. Jiang Shang nodded and stood up to see his guest out. Chapter 8:12. On the 12th of February, the day before the Lantern Festival, a piece of news shook the entire China region. The Protector General of Shanghai City announced that Shanghai City would recruit 5 million players from the 9 Great King cities and distribute them to the 3 provinces, 16 prefectures, 81 prefectures, and more than 400 counties. The recruitment this time was still for players of the professions. What was different was that Shanghai City was unprecedentedly open to casual players. According to the announcement, as long as they met the requirements and were willing to settle down in the counties of Shanghai City, they would be able to enjoy the basic welfare of the territory. The local government offices would provide free housing for these players and provide them with necessities every month to ensure their basic needs and allow them to enjoy their old age in the game. The announcement made it very clear that there would be 1 million casual players, which was 20% of the total number of recruits. For this reason, the Civil Affairs Bureau of the Protectorate of Nanjiang would provide 4 million gold coins to carry out this resettlement plan. Basically, Ouyang Shuo would fork out all the profits from the sale of weapons and equipment. At the same time, the Protectorate of Nanjiang would also borrow 3 million gold coins from the Bank of the Four Seas to ensure the smooth implementation of the plan. With the additional funds from the counties, the total amount of funds would exceed 10 million gold coins. If the cost of housing and welfare were included, it would be an astronomical figure. When the news came out, everyone's first reaction was, Shanghai City has gone crazy. Of course, Ouyang Shuo wasn't crazy. He had discussed this plan with the Civil Affairs Bureau for an entire day before coming up with it. The announcement was only an outline of the plan. Following this, the Financial Department, the Inspector at the Industry and Development Plan, and the Bank of the Four Seas would cooperate with the Civil Affairs Bureau to formulate a detailed resettlement plan. The counties would also formulate a resettlement plan according to the local conditions and report it to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The entire resettlement plan would be a huge project that would require at least 1 to 2 months to complete. It would take at least half a year to truly settle down and get on the right track. Moreover, this was only the first step in Ouyang Shuo's plan of immigration. There were nearly 100 million players in the China region, and Ouyang Shuo's ambition was for Shanghai City to take in at least 30% of them. He wanted them to live under the rule of Shanghai City and get used to its management. Of course, the prerequisite was for Shanghai City to further expand its territory. 5 million people was the upper limit of immigration that the Civil Affairs Bureau had calculated overnight. Any more would not only have a fatal impact on the industries of the counties, but it would also be a huge burden on the county's finances. On the surface, this was a losing deal. In fact, that was not the case. First, casual players only accounted for 20% of the total. This time, the recruitment targets were mainly families. Families with elderly and children would generally have several lifestyle players. Some elderly people were even lifestyle players themselves. In the 22nd century, humans generally lived a long life. People in their 50s or 60s could be considered middle-aged. As a result, the grandchildren of the truly old players had long since grown up, and the great-grandchildren of the slightly older players had already grown up. Using a casual player slot to trap 4 lifestyle players was worth it. Otherwise, Ouyang Shuo would not have been confident in recruiting 4 million lifestyle players in one go. After all, the underground world was about to be opened, and the shortage of raw materials in King City would soon be filled. Secondly, increase the population, and promote the territory's financial growth. The development of the various territories in the wilderness had always been uneven, and many of the 3 provinces that Shanghai City had conquered were still far from being saturated with people. Coupled with the fact that they had experienced a series of wars, it had resulted in an awkward situation where the territory was vast but the population was scarce. This was especially so for the first-level counties. Most of them were forcibly promoted from third-level counties. On average, a county city had a population shortage of 300,000 people. Just the first-level counties alone had a population shortage of more than 4 million people. With the destruction of the territory's stone monument, the population growth of the various counties basically came to a halt. No matter how fast the newborn natives grew, they could not be counted on. Their contribution to the county's population was nearly zero. According to the latest statistics from the Civil Affairs Bureau, at the end of Gaia's 3rd year, the territory's total population was only 25 million. The 3 provinces that Shanghai City occupied were already close to the size of the Ming and Qing dynasties. After all, the Ming dynasty's population had once exceeded 150 million. The Qing dynasty's population was even more terrifying, reaching 43.6 billion. In comparison, Shanghai City was too pitiful. However, Ouyang Shuo did not dare to bring in too many players at once. Once the ratio of players to NPCs became out of balance, it would cause a destructive impact on the weak governance systems of the various counties. He could only bring in a batch first and slowly digest them before bringing in a second batch. The digestion process was also the process of the various counties' rapid development. According to the Finance Bureau's calculations, as long as Shanghai City absorbed the 5 million immigrants, its financial revenue would increase by at least 30%. With this calculation, the initial investment of 10 million gold coins was very worth it. It was also for this reason that after taking over Yunnan City-State, Ouyang Shuo changed Shanghai City's strategy from internal to external. He did not plan on taking action against North Sichuan City-State and South Xiangnan City-State for the time being. He was in no hurry to do anything to Jiangchuan Province and Minnan Province. Ouyang Shuo's goal was very simple. He wanted to use the characteristic of the territory's stone monument to constantly spawn refugees to reserve as many natives as possible. This was so that the next time he brought in players, he could open up a bigger gap. Thirdly, he would appropriately reduce the ratio of soldiers to civilians. After this round of military reorganization, Shanghai City's field corps alone numbered 16, with a total military strength of 12 million. It did not seem terrifying. However, if the Navy's 5 fleets and the various counties' garrison divisions were included, the total military strength would be close to 9 million. According to the total population of 25 million, the ratio of soldiers to civilians was 1:12. It was already very close to the danger level. By bringing in 5 million players at once, it would allow the territory to catch a breather. The above 3 points were only secondary factors. Ouyang Shuo's main goal was to carry out the advice that his grandfather had given him previously. He wanted to drag as many grassroots players as possible onto the big ship that was Shanghai City. Only then would he not become an abandoned pawn. Regardless of Ouyang Shuo's considerations, the 9 great royal cities were in a complete uproar because of Shanghai City's announcement. There were those who agreed and those who disagreed. The underground world was about to be opened, and the ambitious players were naturally unwilling to leave the royal city at this time. However, there were also some players who were tired of the various bloody battles that the various guilds had launched over the satellite cities. They were willing to move to Shanghai City to live a peaceful life. This was especially true for those who had elderly or children at home. The real battle for the satellite cities had not even begun, and the various guilds were already in a killing frenzy. It was not hard to imagine how fierce the official battle would be after the Lantern Festival ended. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there would be rivers of blood. At that time, it was unknown how many players would reincarnate, and their 3 years of hard work would go down the drain. Regardless, Shanghai City's recruitment order was still very popular. After Shanghai City took over Yunnan City, The players of the China server recognized Shanghai City as the overlord. It was safer to settle down in Shanghai City than in the royal city. Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua's study. Besides recruiting 5 million players, Ouyang Shua was also preparing other means to deal with the imminent threat of the Silver Hand. In the study set the two leaders of the intelligence agencies, Shun Buhai and the Black Snake. Previously, Ouyang Shua had divided the work between Shanghai Guards and the Black Snake Guards, but the division was not thorough. Because of this, it not only caused the two intelligence agencies to cross paths, but it also resulted in redundant personnel and a waste of funds. To make matters worse, because of the cross-competition, there were surveillance blind spots and blind spots. For example, the intelligence error in the Yunnan battle was caused by the two intelligence agencies' eagerness to perform, but they lost their cool. After that black incident, the three intelligence agencies conducted a thorough introspection. Ouyang Shua looked at their investigation report and felt rather guilty. Using the opportunity of the Silver Hand casting a net on Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua was prepared to completely separate the two intelligence agencies, leaving no hidden dangers. All the operations of the Black Snake Guards in the China server, including the spies, will be handed over to the Shanghai Guards. Ouyang Shua's first sentence shocked the Black Snake. "My lord." The Black Snake's face was pale. He thought that his lord was blaming him for the black incident. Could it be that the Black Snake Guards have lost the lord's trust? The Black Snake felt bitter. Once the intelligence agency lost the lord's trust, it could only be disbanded. Even Shinbuhai was a little surprised and could not make up his mind. Ouyang Shua waved his hand, gesturing for the two to calm down. He asked Shunbuhai, after the Shanghai Guards take over, "Do you have the confidence to investigate the mutants?" Shunbuhai was a rigid person. He seriously thought about it before answering. There will be a period of adaptation. After that, there shouldn't be too many problems. The Shanghai Guards are no longer in the initial stage. There are also mutants under their command. Moreover, the Shanghai Guards had also accumulated some experience in monitoring the Black Snake Guards. However, it was not an easy task to take over all of them. "How long will it take?" Ouyang Shua asked. Shinbuhai did not hesitate and said, 2 months. Ouyang Shua stretched out 3 fingers and said calmly, "I will give you 3 months. If you mess up, you know the consequences." Shinbuhai felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. "My lord, please rest assured. If I can't do it, I will willingly offer my head." Shinbuhai made a military pledge. Ouyang Shua nodded and looked at the Black Snake, who had calmed down a little. He said, "The Black Snake Guards have to cooperate with the Shanghai Guards and complete the relevant handover work as soon as possible. I will give you half a month. Is that enough?" The Black Snake's voice was dry, but he had not lost his judgment. He calculated in his heart and replied, "Enough." If he really wanted to handle the handover, the main things would be the roster of the informants, spies, and other members, as well as their contact information, a full set of intelligence files, and finally the major intelligence stations. Most of the information could be completed at the headquarters in Shanghai City. Chapter 813. What Black Snake was worried about naturally did not happen. Even though he, as the commander of the Black Snake Guards, should take responsibility for the dark intelligence incident that took place in the Yunnan War, he had already been punished. Ouyang Shua looked at the Black Serpent again and said, "After you're done with the domestic handover, you'll take the 9 prefectural envoys of the Black Serpent Guards to Lion City, Friendship City, Bay City, and other peripheral cities to lay a global intelligence network. The Mountain Sea Guard would be responsible for domestic intelligence, while the Black Snake Guard would be responsible for international intelligence." This was Ouyang Shua's plan. From then on, the two intelligence agencies would no longer cross paths. As for the fact that the Mountain Sea Guard would not be able to effectively supervise the Black Snake Guard, Ouyang Shua was not worried. Since the establishment of the Black Snake Guard, Black Snake had proven his loyalty. Secondly, the headquarters of the Black Snake Guard would still be in Scholartree Manor in Shanghai City. Once Black Snake was done, he would have to return to Shanghai City to take command. Therefore, the Mountain Sea Guard could still supervise the Black Snake Guard to a limited extent. Ouyang Shuo continued, with Lion City as the center, establish the Asian Intelligence Division. With Friendship City as the center, establish the African Intelligence Division. With Bay City as the center, establish the European Intelligence Division. In the future, we will also establish the North American Intelligence Division and the South American Intelligence Division to cover the entire world. How about it? Are you confident? Black Snake's shock turned to joy, his emotions fluctuating. He hurriedly calmed himself down and nodded. No problem. This time, the Black Snake Guard was not starting from scratch. As early as when the 3 major cities were taken, the Black Snake Guard had already extended its tentacles according to the Lord's request. What Black Snake needed to do was to build on this foundation and improve further. Similarly, the Mountain Sea Guard's Overseas Division will also be handed over to the Black Snake Guard. From now on, one will be responsible for internal affairs, while the other will be responsible for external affairs. They will not interfere with each other, Ouyang Shuo said. Understood. Shin Buhai and Black Snake nodded in unison. Ouyang Shuo said, Black Snake, you have to follow up on the Somali side. According to Gu Xiuwen, those guys are becoming more and more unfriendly towards Friendship City. Find a chance to teach them a lesson. Don't worry, my lord. I will definitely take care of this matter. Black Snake was in high spirits. Ouyang Shuo nodded, and his expression suddenly became solemn as he said, What I'm going to say next is limited to the 2 of you. Don't leak it out. Shimbu Hai and the Black Snake looked at each other and saw the surprise and understanding in each other's eyes. Just now, they were still wondering why Junshang would suddenly adjust the 2 intelligence agencies. They were afraid that it had something to do with what was going to happen next. Ouyang Shuo told them about the Silver Hand one by one. The more they listened, the more shocked they became. The Yanhuang Alliance was already powerful enough, but who would have thought that there would be such a terrifying organization in the world? Ouyang Shuo said, I'm sure all of you have realized that the Silver Hand will be the mortal enemy of Shanghai City, and also the biggest obstacle for us to expand overseas. If we don't figure out this opponent, we have no chance of winning. My lord, this official understands. Black Snake's eyes flashed with a trace of heat. He finally understood why Junshang was so eager to establish a global intelligence network. Even though Black Snake was a famous international mercenary leader in reality, he knew nothing about the Silver Hand. The thought of colliding with such a behemoth made the Black Serpent's blood boil. Ouyang Shuo glanced at Black Snake and said, Blood can be hot, but brains can't be hot. We know almost nothing about this opponent. Since we can't even deal with the powerful academies, it's not something we can touch now. Be careful not to spy on them and fall into the enemy's trap. Black Snake calmed down. He was not a reckless person and said, Don't worry, my lord. In the first 2 to 3 months, the Black Snake Guards will focus on building the overseas intelligence network and will not take the initiative to provoke them. That's good. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, I will subsidize the Black Snake Guards another 500,000 gold coins to expand the overseas intelligence network. You will have to rely on yourselves for the next period of time. Thank you, my lord. Black Snake's expression was a little moved. Of course, he knew that the territory's funds are basically spent on the 5 million recruitment plan. Under such circumstances, it was already very rare that the Lord could still squeeze out 500,000 gold coins. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand. Go and prepare. He had already explained everything that needed to be said. This official will take his leave. Shimbu Hai and Black Snake bade farewell and left. The next period of time would be enough for the 2 of them to be busy. Ouyang Shuo sat alone in the study and raised his head to look at the sky outside the window. He saw a patch of dark clouds suddenly floating in the blue sky. They seemed to be swallowing the entire blue sky. A storm is coming. Ouyang Shuo was most worried about the situation in the Mediterranean Sea. Although he could not guess which members of the Silver Hand were in the world, William and Henry, who were from large families in the real world, must be them. What kind of changes would happen in the Mediterranean Sea because of this incident? Ouyang Shuo had no way of knowing. He had secretly made up his mind that after Shanghai City was established, he would immediately send troops to Morocco. As for the original target of attack, Annan Kingdom, he could put aside for now. Time waits for no man. The strategic location of the base city was too important, and it was the only stop for the Mediterranean fleet. However, such a place could not achieve self-sufficiency, and it was too dangerous. Only by taking down Morocco could the Mediterranean fleet advance and retreat. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo picked up his pen and wrote a letter to Queen Kalia of Atlantis, asking her to take care of the base city on his behalf. If there were any changes, he hoped that Atlantis could intervene and protect the base city. Although such a request was a little shameless, Ouyang Shuo could only do so. As for William and Henry, Ouyang Shuo was not in a hurry to send a letter to test their attitude. Before the situation became clear, the two of them would definitely not take sides. Even if they did, they would not clearly stand on Shanghai City's side. The relationship between the two parties was not that solid, and Ouyang Shuo did not want to humiliate himself. Only Ouyang Shuo's gentle breathing could be heard in the huge study. The lively Lantern Festival arrived in the blink of an eye. This also meant that the spring festival cycle was coming to an end, and the auspicious and festive atmosphere that shrouded the wilderness would gradually dissipate, replaced by killing and indifference again. With the establishment of the country at hand, Shanghai City held the grandest Lantern Festival in the territory's history on the night of the Lantern Festival. The huge city that stretched as far as the eye could see was filled with colorful lanterns of various colors. Hundreds of leisure plazas in the city were lit up with huge, colorful lanterns that looked like tall buildings, attracting countless citizens to come and watch. The small merchants and peddlers naturally would not let go of a business opportunity. There were people selling candied haws, sugar figurines, steamed flour cakes, clay figurines, paper cutters, shadow puppets, and so on. Acrobatic troupes and all kinds of performers also took the opportunity to walk into the plaza and began their performances. They won cheers and naturally made a lot of money. It was the Lantern Festival, and adults and children were especially generous. Moreover, it was located at the foot of the royal city, and the citizens lived a rich life, so their spending power was naturally the highest. Mixed in the crowd were not only Southeast Asian merchants, but also many Western merchants and missionaries who came from afar to enjoy the cultural feast that was unique to the ancient Eastern civilization. Some Western merchants did not forget to take the opportunity to promote the Western treasures they brought back and forth among the crowd. There were magnifying glasses that could magnify things, colorful gems, and countless other rare things. It was really lively. Some people said that many things that could not be bought in the royal city could be found in Shanghai City. The prosperity of the ocean trade and the gathering of merchants from tens of thousands of countries made Shanghai City, a new city in the wilderness, more and more extraordinary. Other than the plaza, other places were equally lively. On the excavated Friendship River, flower boats competed with each other for beauty. The trees on both sides of the river were also full of colorful lanterns, and tens of thousands of people surrounded the shore to release prayer lanterns. Some prayed for the safety and health of their loved ones. Some prayed for fame, and some prayed for wealth. The Mazu Temple, the Earth Temple, the Bell and Drum Tower, and other landmark buildings were also the focus of decoration. In particular, the Mazu Temple, as well as the newly built Taoist temples and temples in the city, all kinds of temple fairs were held on the last day. The current Shanghai City was already in full bloom. All kinds of religions could take root here, and even the Western churches would not be excluded. The wilderness had not evolved to the Wei and Jin dynasties, and Buddhist culture had not spread in the wilderness. The sects in the city were still based on Taoism, and there were probably no less than 15 to 16 Taoist halls and Taoist temples. The Dragon King Temple, the God of Wealth Temple, and the Earth Temple could be seen everywhere. Of course, the most eye-catching one was the North City Tower of the Royal City. Hundreds of the most noble, most exquisite, and most original lanterns in the city were gathered here, and it was naturally the best lantern. The sky was filled with fireworks that bloomed throughout the night. Among the fireworks were sky lanterns that carried the wishes and blessings of countless people, illuminating the entire night sky. They gradually disappeared into the night sky, drifting into the endless distance. Shanghai City had completely become a city that never sleeps, and it was filled with endless prosperity and elegance. 3 years ago, who would have thought that an inconspicuous small village would develop into a giant city that was the center of the world attention? Amidst the bustle, the first fire brigade established by the Public Order Department of Shanghai City ran through the streets and alleys of the city, putting out the fire in time to ensure the safety of the festival. The governance system of Shanghai City was becoming more and more modern. Royal City, North City Tower. Ouyang Shuo brought Song Jia, Binger, and the others to sit on the city tower, eating all kinds of delicious food while enjoying the bustling night view of Shanghai City, celebrating the festival together. On both sides of Ouyang Shuo sat Jiang Shang, Xiao He, and the other ministers. They all joined in the fun and began to recite poems with the lanterns as the theme. The poems were talking about the lanterns, but they were actually praising the prosperity in front of them. Ouyang Shuo listened with a smile, and from time to time, he would give all kinds of rewards, but his heart was unusually calm. Who knew how many undercurrents were surging under this bustling scene? Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 814. The Lantern Festival was a day of reunion and celebration, but it was also the final preparation time for all kinds of conspirators. On this night, a small white token completely stirred up the guilds in the 9 royal cities, secretly setting off a monstrous wave in an attempt to dismember the Mountain and Sea Alliance Guild Alliance. Their real purpose was to take this opportunity to remove the outer barrier of Mountain and Sea City. Needless to say, this conspirator was the Silver Hand. In the China region, in addition to the original 6 members of the Handan 6 hegemons, the Silver Hand also had many secret members. These members were basically secret families, and they didn't come out easily. For example, the leader of the Star Alliance, the Dust of Star, and a hidden family behind him were members of the Silver Hand. However, under Ouyang Shuo's intervention, Stardust's appearance did not go smoothly, and he was disgraced. In the world, the China region had the deepest foundation and the longest history, so there were many secret members in the China region. Apart from the founder of the Silver Hand, no one knew the exact number of people. After the Silver Hand listed Ouyang Shuo as an extremely dangerous anomaly and activated the 15th clause, the first to take action were not the foreign members, but the secret members of the China region. Today, they had reached the first stage of closing the net. After tonight, the entire structure of the guilds in the China region would change. Chuanzhou, the headquarters of the Flowing Light Pavilion. In the secret room of the president, 2 people sat opposite each other. One was the pavilion master of the Flowing Light Pavilion, Juni Lao, and the other was a middle-aged man with a simple face. Upon closer inspection, the middle-aged man looked somewhat similar to Juni Lao. Xiao Jun, it's been almost 10 years since that incident. Are you still unable to let it go? The middle-aged man picked up the teacup and took a sip, looking at Jun Lao with a slightly kind gaze. Don't look at me like that. It's disgusting. Jun Lao's heart was obviously in a mess. It was obvious that the middle-aged man in front of him had an unusual relationship with him. You are my son, Jun Lao said with a mocking expression. Illegitimate child or bastard, when you coldly expel me from the family, I had nothing to do with you anymore. Didn't you guys think highly of yourselves? Didn't you adhere to some *T ancestral rules and didn't step into the mortal world? What's wrong? You can't stand the loneliness anymore and want to jump out again? Earth is gone. What are we still holding on to? A trace of loneliness flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes. For the secret families, it was undoubtedly a very painful choice to leave Earth, China, and the roots that their ancestors had laid down for generations. It almost destroyed their lifelong beliefs. Some old fellows would rather die than migrate. If I go to Hope Planet, where should I be buried when I die? This was their obsession. The middle-aged man in front of him had been influenced by these values since he was young. Naturally, he had suffered the pain of being cut off. Old June remained silent. Xiao Jun, times have changed. A new era is coming, an era that belongs to you young people. Old fellows like us have fallen behind the times and will be slowly eliminated." The middle-aged man's words were sincere as he continued. "The clan has already decided to come out of seclusion and appoint you as the successor of the clan. We will assist you in leading the Flowing Light Pavilion to establish hegemony in Chuanzhou and take down the satellite city. I don't need it. I can handle it myself." Hearing this, there was a slight fluctuation in old Jun's heart, but his words were unyielding. The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "You can't. Don't scare me." The middle-aged man said, "I'm sure you know a thing or two about the clan's power. Chuanzhou is the foundation of our clan. We've been operating it for hundreds of years. Even in the game, more than 30% of the leaders of the guilds in Chuanzhou are still indirectly controlled by the clan. Xiaojun, do you really think you can succeed in opposing the clan?" Old Jun's eyes narrowed. Why? Old Jun naturally knew the clan's power, but wasn't this power not easily used? Because of this, the middle-aged man took out a small white token from his chest. The token was very ordinary, made of pure silver. It was not expensive, and there were no patterns or carvings on the surface. However, it looked a little strange. The tip of the token was like a small palm. Old Jun was shocked when he saw it. He said in horror, "The silver secret token of the silver hand. Who are you going to deal with?" He calmed down and asked with some uncertainty, "Could it be Shanghai City?" "That's right. Despicable. You actually attacked your own people." Old Jun stood up angrily. The middle-aged man said, "Our own people? After the establishment of the Federation, is there still a distinction between allies and enemies? If there is no difference, then what are you still defending? To unify the world?" Old Jun's face was indescribable mockery. "In the end, isn't it Shanghai City that blocked your path? You make it sound so beautiful. Maybe you're right." The middle-aged man did not argue anymore. His son had grown up and was even more powerful. He could not be fooled. But how could anyone in a high position believe in nonsense like ideals? Oomph. Old Jun did not know what to say and sat back down resentfully. The atmosphere in the secret room suddenly became a little awkward. It was still the middle-aged man who spoke. He did not want to beat around the bush anymore. He directly handed the white token to Old Jun and said, "Do you accept this token? What if I accept it? What if I don't accept it?" The middle-aged man said, "If you accept it, you will be the heir of the clan and also the overlord of Chuanzhou. If you don't accept it, you will be the enemy of the clan. I think you know what will happen in the end." Old Jun was silent for a long time. Flowing Light Pavilion was his painstaking effort. It was also his last trace of pride after leaving the clan. If he did not accept the silver token, it was tantamount to becoming the enemy of Silverhand. At the thought of that behemoth, no matter how stubborn Old Jun was, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. But Old Jun was unwilling to succumb to the despotic power of the clan. As long as he thought of that rainy night 10 years ago, when he was 14 years old and left the old house deep in the mountains under the indifferent gaze of the clan, Old Jun could not suppress a ball of anger in his heart. This flame burned for 10 years and still did not extinguish. He did not expect that after 10 years, that clan would let him return to the clan because of a white token. The way of the world was really ironic. Old Jun's fingernails unconsciously pierced into his flesh, causing a dull pain. Seeing this, the middle-aged man did not want to turn against his son. He tried to persuade him, "Wu and you are only in a cooperative relationship. Is it worthwhile for you to sacrifice for him? An anomaly is an anomaly after all." Old Jun suddenly raised his head and fixed his eyes on the middle-aged man. He said in a hoarse voice, "I accept." As he said this, he reached out to take the small token, but it was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. "That's my son." The middle-aged man smiled with relief. Old Jun's heart was dripping blood. Chengdu, the headquarters of Laojun Temple. Among the headquarters of all the guilds, the Laojun Temple was the most special. The whole headquarters was a large Taoist field. There were many Taoist temples, which contrasted with the overall architectural style of Chengdu. There were many outstanding people in Sichuan, and there was also the legend of the Sword Immortal of Mount Shu, so the atmosphere of cultivation was very strong. It was not a coincidence that the Laojun Temple was located in Chengdu. It was night, and the lights were bright. An old Taoist holding a horsetail whisk came to the front of the Laojun Temple. "Who are you?" Laojun Temple was dominated by Taoist professional players. Even the gatekeeper was dressed as a Taoist. He spoke very carefully and was not so straightforward. The old Taoist flicked his horsetail whisk, made a bow, and said, "Please inform your temple master that an old friend, Xianjizi, has come to visit." The guard saw that the old Taoist was a bit sage-like, so he did not dare to neglect and immediately entered the door to report. Not long after, a middle-aged man rushed out of the door. He was wearing a green Taoist robe, and his face was ruddy. At first glance, one could tell that he was a Taoist with deep cultivation. Looking closely, one could see that the man's face was full of excitement and expectation, so he walked in a hurry all the way. It was the temple master of the Laojun Temple, Taoist priest Greenbull. Taoist priest Greenbull was also a quite legendary figure. In reality, he was a rich family of 3 generations, and his family was quite rich. It was said that once he went to the mountain to play, he met a master and had a great enlightenment, and stepped into the Taoist gate. After that, Taoist priest Greenbull cultivated in the deep mountain for 5 years before going down the mountain. After going down the mountain, he directly took a Taoist certificate and became a serious Taoist. He even built a Taoist temple on the outskirts of Chengdu with his own money and widely accepted disciples. Although he was a certified Taoist, Taoist priest Greenbull was not old-fashioned at all, and he kept up with the times. In addition to building a Taoist temple and accepting disciples, Taoist priest Greenbull was also one of the moderators of the world's most famous Taoist forum, Purple Cloud Palace. When he was free, he would post on the forum to solve doubts and spread Taoist knowledge. Because of his profound Taoist knowledge and humor, he had a large number of loyal fans. Taoist priest Greenbull's name was made at that time. As a result, even the Taoist temple he built became more and more famous. From time to time, netizens of the Purple Cloud Palace would come to see Taoist priest Greenbull. Some senior netizens could even sit and discuss Taoism with Taoist priest Greenbull, which was very comfortable. The Laojun Temple in the game was built based on the Taoist temple in reality. The core members were all disciples recruited by Taoist priest Greenbull, and the backbone members were mainly netizens of the Purple Cloud Palace. Therefore, the Laojun Temple could be regarded as a rather legendary guild among the top 10 guilds. Taoist priest Greenbull rushed out of the gate and saw the old Taoist waiting outside. He could no longer suppress his excitement and said in a trembling voice, "Master, it's really you." As he said that, a trace of tears flashed in the corner of his eyes. Taoist priest Greenbull said that he had been guided by an expert in the deep mountain, and it was not a lie. If it were not for such an adventure, Taoist priest Greenbull would not have had a series of achievements later. In the following years, Taoist priest Greenbull had entered the mountain more than 10 times, hoping to see his master again, but he could not. He had always felt regretful. When the interstellar migration began, Taoist priest Greenbull thought that he would never see his master again in this life. He never thought that his master would take the initiative to visit him in this life. How could Taoist priest Greenbull not be excited? Silly boy. The old Taoist smiled gently, and his expression was also emotional. Chapter 8:15. In a quiet room at the headquarters of the Laojun Temple, Taoist priest Green Ox personally served tea. "Master is elusive. It took me a long time to find him." Xianjizi said, "I'm used to living a carefree life, so I don't see him." Taoist priest Green Ox hesitated and asked, "Then, why did Master come this time? If I can help, I will never refuse." He didn't believe that this mysterious master would come for no reason. "I was entrusted by someone, so I can't help myself," Xianjizi said and took out a white token. Taoist priest Green Ox was puzzled and asked, "What is this?" Although he was a rich 3rd generation in reality, he couldn't enter the eyes of the silver hands, so he naturally didn't know. Xianjizi gave a general introduction of the silver hands. "This Taoist priest Green Ox gasped and asked, "Is there really such a mysterious organization in the world? I thought it was made up." There is no lack of speculation about various mysterious organizations on the internet. Ordinary people saw it, but they just regarded it as a strange story and no one would really believe it. Even if they believed it, there was no way to prove it. Xian Jizi nodded and said, "My sect is a member of the Silver Hands. This time, I want to ask you to accept this silver secret order on behalf of the Laojun Temple." After receiving the order, do I have to obey the command of the Silver Hands? Taoist priest Green Ox was a little hesitant. People of the Taoist sect couldn't stand such restrictions. Xian Jizi smiled and said, "It's not that exaggerated." With that, Xian Jizi told the purpose of the Silver Hands to Taoist priest Green Ox. It was nothing more than to make the Laojun Temple draw a clear line with Shanghai City and join the Yanhuang Alliance. Xian Jizi continued, "After you receive the order, the Silver Hands will use some power in Chengdu to ensure that the Laojun Temple takes over the satellite town of Chengdu as a return." Taoist priest Green Ox was immediately moved. The profession of Taoist was not a mainstream profession in the game, and the Laojun Temple had many challengers in Chengdu, so its position was not very stable. Taoist priest Green Ox was worried about how to take over the satellite town. He didn't expect that there would be such joy. From the looks of it, Master really is my lucky star, Taoist priest Azure Bull thought to himself. Without any hesitation, Taoist priest Green Bull took the token and said with a smile, "Since Master has come forward, of course I agree. I accept this silver secret order." Xian Jizi nodded expressionlessly. In the end, Xian Jizi's sect was not willing to get involved in the struggles of the mortal world. However, when one was in the Jianghu, one's actions were beyond one's control. Even secluded sects could not completely break away from the shackles of the mortal world. "Master, may I ask why the Silver Hand wants to deal with Shanghai City?" However, Xian Jizi couldn't say too much. Even in the introduction of the Silver Hand, he had some reservations about Taoist priest Green Ox. Who knew if this person would have a second-grade syndrome? Perhaps he can't stand the way Shanghai City is doing things, Xian Jizi said vaguely. Taoist priest Green Ox seemed to understand, but he didn't want to understand. The relationship between the Laojun Temple and Shanghai City was established through a third party. There was no friendship between them. "I can only say that I'm sorry." Taoist priest Azure Bull didn't feel guilty at all. Luoyang, the headquarters of the Tingyu Tower, Sword Energy Thunderous stared at the man opposite her with a frosty face. "What are you doing here?" At the moment, standing opposite Sword Energy Thunderous was the gang master of the crisscrossing Sword Energy, One Sword from the West, who was also the former chivalrous partner of Sword Energy Thunderous and now his sworn enemy. One Sword from the West said, "Ian, are you still not willing to forgive me? Dream on." Sword Energy Thunderous stared angrily. One Sword from the West let out a long sigh and said, "You're still so eager to win." The right and wrong of what happened that year was already unclear. As a man, One Sword from the West didn't want to care about it. But he really liked Sword Energy Thunderous. As the gang master of the crisscrossing Sword Energy, what kind of woman couldn't he get? However, One Sword from the West was still alone. Not only the members of the crisscrossing Sword Aura, but also the members of the Listening to the Rain Tower admired their building master and tried to enlighten him. As One Sword from the West said, Sword Energy Thunderous was too eager to win. Their breakup back then had something to do with this. After they separated, Sword Energy Thunderous publicly declared that he would not give up easily if he defeated One Sword from the West. Perhaps this had already become Sword Energy Thunderous' obsession. Do you know how dangerous Planet Hope's environment is? One Sword from the West suddenly changed the topic. Sword Energy Thunderous pricked up his brows. In the Federation's propaganda, Planet Hope was basically heaven. However, people like Sword Energy Thunderous would not easily believe it. The Federation said so to encourage immigration and at the same time encourage the citizens. Sword Energy Thunderous was also very curious about what kind of environment Planet Hope was. When One Sword from the West saw this, he continued, "Long before the interstellar immigration, the Federation had sent an advance fleet to Planet Hope. Not long ago, Planet Hope's information was transmitted to Gaia. In fact, Planet Hope is not an ideal home. There are a large number of natives living on the planet. They take a path that is completely different from Earth's technological civilization. The natives there are freakishly strong, and the more special ones even have superpowers. It's a little like the magi of ancient myths and legends. That's why combat professional players like us will have a bright future on Planet Hope. If the Federation wants to take root on Planet Hope, they need lords to open up new territory and a large number of warriors to charge and break through enemy lines. Gaia has already simulated them into a game race based on the information of the natives collected by the advance fleet. After they're done, they'll prioritize releasing them into the subterranean world that's about to open so that we can practice in advance. Sword Energy Thunderous was shocked by this news. After a long time, he said, "I appreciate what you've told me. However, it's impossible for me to forgive you. You should leave." One sword from the west panicked and said, "Ain, why don't you understand?" "Understand what?" A hint of fanaticism flashed across one sword's face, and his eyes shone with ambition. He said agitatedly, "Such a Planet Hope is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. Isn't it a great opportunity for us to change our fate? As long as we hold the guild firmly in our hands, when we reach Planet Hope, we'll be above the rest, leaders, and no longer pawns at the mercy of others. If we fight among ourselves like this, we'll be playing with our future. So, Ain, I beg you to stop. With the two of us working together, who do we have to fear in the China region?" Sword Energy Thunderous sneered and said, "A person who can't even control the capital city dares to say such big words. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue?" One sword from the west was unconcerned and said, "You're talking about Shadow Alliance and Single Dream Brothel, right? The two of them won't be able to jump around for long. The satellite cities in the capital city will definitely belong to Crisscrossing Sword." Sword Energy Thunderous heart sank. Seeing that one sword from the west expression did not seem to be fake, he said deliberately, "Even if you can take them down, you'll still have to rely on Yin Huang Alliance's support. You're a pawn of Yin Huang Alliance, and you still say you're not a pawn at the mercy of others? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? One sword from the west was unconvinced and said, "What do you mean by pawn? We're working together, but we're just using each other. If not for Yin Huang Alliance, would I have been able to obtain the top secret information I just told you? This is called taking what we need. When we get a Hope Planet, we'll all go our separate ways. Who can control who?" Sword Energy Thunderous said, "If that's the case, isn't it better to choose to work with Shanghai City? At the very least, Wui isn't like Di Chun and the others who eat people up without spitting out the bones. Don't tell me you don't know about the state of Yunnan City. Also, Shadow Alliance and Single Dream Brothel also have Shanghai City behind them. Even with Yin Huang Alliance's help, are you so confident that you can take down the satellite cities in the capital city? Right now, Yin Huang Alliance has been beaten so badly by Shanghai City that they can't even stand up straight. Don't be so happy after being dumped." One sword from the west smiled and said, "That's why I came to find you today. I'd like to hear what you have to say." Sword Energy Thunderous interest was completely piqued. It seemed like one sword from the west had come prepared today. One sword from the west smiled mysteriously and said, "You don't know, right? I'm afraid Shanghai City won't be able to jump around for long. Are you all right? You're getting more and more ridiculous." Sword Energy Thunderous frowned. One sword from the west lowered his voice and said, "Ain, I'll tell you the truth. Yin Huang Alliance indeed doesn't have the confidence to deal with Shanghai City. But behind Yin Huang Alliance, there's a mysterious organization. That organization's terror will scare you to death. This time, Shanghai City has incurred the wrath of the public. Some people can't stand it and want to deal with Wui. Isn't working with Shanghai City at this time akin to courting death? Mysterious organization? Is it a lie made up by Di Chun and the others to trick you?" One sword from the west shook his head and said, "I'm not stupid. I can't tell you the specifics right now. Unless you swear that even if you don't agree to my suggestion, you won't tell Wui what I told you today." I'm putting my life on the line this time. Ain, you don't want to hurt me, right? Sword Energy Thunderous saw this and felt touched. He said, "All right, I swear." Saying this, he swore an oath. One sword from the west saw this, and his expression was complicated. There was joy and reminiscence. The oath made by Sword Energy Thunderous was a unique oath that only the two of them knew. It was a memory that they shared. At least she hasn't forgotten the past. One sword from the west thought to himself. One sword from the west collected his emotions and slowly took out a small white token. He told Sword Energy Thunderous all the information about Silverhand. Sword Energy Thunderous' expression was exactly the same as Taoist priest Greenbull's. One sword from the west could understand Sword Energy Thunderous. He was the same back then. He smiled and said, "Ain, do you believe me now? There's no tomorrow for you to follow Shanghai City." Chapter 8:16. Sword Chi Thunderous Sound's emotions were complicated, and it was hard for him to make a decision. Unlike the Flowing Light Pavilion and the Laojun Temple, the Tingyu Pavilion was an official member of the League of Mountains and Seas Guild Alliance, and Thunder Sword Energy himself was quite familiar with the members of the Alliance. Between the members of the Alliance, there was no longer just a simple conflict of interest. There was also friendship. It was too much to ask her to betray the alliance of mountains and seas. Seeing this, one sword from the west said, "Ain, I know you are in a difficult situation, but if he didn't accept the Silver Secret Order, the Rain Listening Tower might not even be able to take down the satellite city of Luoyang with the terrifying means of the Silver Hand. Losing the satellite city was equivalent to losing their position as the overlord of the royal city. Do you understand the consequences? Is the Hand of Silver really that terrifying?" Thunder Sword Energy asked. One sword from the west casually mentioned the names of the leaders of 4 or 5 large guilds in Luoyang and said, "Standing behind these guys are all hidden aristocratic families, which are members of the Silver Hand. Apart from those who were directly controlled, there were even more who were indirectly controlled by the hidden aristocratic families. Even Di Chun and the others didn't know. Tell me, are they scary?" Thunderous Sword Energy's throat was a little dry. The leaders of these guilds that Yi Jinshi mentioned previously all vowed to cooperate with the Tingyu Tower. Once they collectively betrayed him, the consequences would be unimaginable. When he thought about it this way, he really did not have much confidence. The key was that no one knew how many guilds the Hand of Silver could control if it was fully activated. The unknown was the scariest. Seeing this, one sword from the west decided to add fuel to the fire. He advised, "Cooperating with the Silver Hand is not forcing you to turn against Shanghai City. The Tingyu Tower has just chosen a new partner. If you feel bad about it, you could just avoid a head-on conflict with Shanghai City." On this point, the Silver Hand did not insist. "I think that they can also understand your difficulties." This was giving him a way out. Thunder Sword Chi's expression was complicated. He asked reluctantly, "Do I have to accept the order? I can't not answer it. Think about Planet Hope. Weren't we compromising today so that we wouldn't be manipulated by others in the future?" "Ain, don't ruin your own future," one sword from the west said. Thunder of Sword Chi closed his eyes in pain and said bitterly, "I'll take it." "Great." One sword from the west was so excited that he wanted to step forward and hug the Sword Chi Thunderous Sound. But when he was right in front of it, he came to his senses and awkwardly froze his hand in the air. Seeing this, Sword Chi lay inside inwardly. The moment he received the order, Thunder Sword suddenly felt uneasy. It was as if he had made a terrible decision that day. Unfortunately, there's no turning back now. Thunderous Sword Chi's mood was complicated. After one sword to the west left, Thunder Sword Chi wrote a final letter to Ouyang Shua. The content of the letter was very short. There was only one sentence. "Sorry, please be careful." In the end, Thunder Sword Chi thought about it and added the names of the leaders of the other guilds to the end of the letter. She believed that Ouyang Shua was able to understand what she meant. "This is all I can do." Thunderclap, Sword's heart ached. Dali, Ministry of Justice. More than 200 constables gathered in the courtyard. which was incompatible with the festive atmosphere of the Lantern Festival. On the steps, an assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice read the arrest warrant. After investigation, the pavilion master of the Breeze Pavilion, Bright Moon Illuminates the River, is the blood brother of the Kunming County Chief of the Southern Border Protectorate, Baiwa. The two of them have a close relationship and are suspected of colluding with the enemy. Now the Bright Moon Illuminates the River is to be taken to the prison of the Ministry of Justice for interrogation and to find out the truth. Yes, sir. Under the command, the constables rushed out of the Ministry of Justice under the leadership of the constables. Passers-by on the road saw them, and all got out of the way. When the constables were far away, they came out again and pointed at them. It's a big festival. Who committed a crime and even alarmed the constables directly under the Ministry of Justice? Who knows? In less than half an hour, a group of constables arrived at the headquarters of the Breeze Pavilion. The guards of the Breeze Pavilion were also puzzled when they saw a group of constables from the imperial court. The constables did not stand on ceremony. They showed the arrest warrant and immediately led the constables into the courtyard of the headquarters. The guards did not dare to stop them. They only arranged for someone to rush to inform the pavilion master. A large guild was naturally not afraid of the 200 constables in front of them. However, they could not deny that they were from the imperial court. They had the backing of 1,000,000 imperial guards, so they had no choice but to be afraid. At this stage, even a great lord like Ouyang Shua did not dare to go against the capital, much less a guild of players that made a living in the capital. Of course, under normal circumstances, the imperial court would not find trouble with a guild of players. Gaia had strict restrictions on this, especially in a capital city like Dali that had yet to be ruled by an emperor. The imperial court was like an invisible person that would not appear in front of the players. It was clearly different this time. There was an expert operating behind the scenes, wantonly spreading rumors about Bright Moon Illuminating River and White Birch. The Ministry of Justice had sufficient reason, so it was reasonable for them to send constables. Furthermore, the arrest warrant stated very clearly that they were only temporarily holding Bright Moon Illuminating River. After the truth was investigated, if Bright Moon Illuminating River was innocent, they would immediately be released. The crux of the matter was that the contest for the satellite city would begin tomorrow. If they took down Bright Moon Illuminating River at this time, the Breeze Pavilion would immediately be without a leader. His sinister intentions were clear as day. Therefore, when Bright Moon Illuminating River received the news, they immediately thought of the contest for the satellite city tomorrow. It was too much of a coincidence. Many times, excessive coincidences are not coincidences, but conspiracies. Bright Moon Illuminating River knew this, but he did not dare to take the opportunity to escape. Once he resisted arrest, the imperial court would have sufficient reason to seal up the Breeze Pavilion. When that happened, it would be an even greater disaster. The mastermind was truly vicious. He had been hiding all this while, only taking action on the night of the Lantern Festival. He had caught Bright Moon Illuminating River off guard and had no time to prepare. Pavilion Master, what should we do now? While the constables were still at the door, the upper echelons of the guild urgently discussed countermeasures. Bright Moon Illuminating River had already calmed down. He said, "No matter what, we cannot be disorderly, nor can we have a conflict with the constables. Otherwise, we will fall into their trap. Cool Breeze, restrain the gang members. Do not let your emotions affect your decisions." As the second in command of the Breeze Pavilion, Cool Breeze had a lot of prestige. Understood. Cool Breeze turned and left. Another deputy pavilion master of the Breeze Pavilion, Night Rain, asked, "What about tomorrow's contest for the satellite city?" Bright Moon Illuminating River said, "Follow the original plan. When I'm not here, you and Cool Breeze will command. I think the enemy has more than this ruthless move. I'm afraid there will be more waves in tomorrow's contest. You have to be careful." Night Rain nodded with a solemn expression. "Also, after I leave, immediately send a letter to White Birch and tell her everything that happened today. I suspect that this matter is not simple. I'm afraid that the mastermind has a big plan." Bright Moon Illuminating River said, Night Rain was shocked when he heard this. He hesitated and asked, Pavilion Master, do you mean that their real purpose this time is to deal with Shanghai City? It can't be. It's hard to say. Bright Moon illuminating river did not dare to draw a conclusion. Anyway, it's always good to be careful. Although Bright Moon illuminating river did not say it with certainty, his intuition told him that behind this conspiracy, there was a high chance that Shanghai City was the target. Because if it was just to prevent the Breeze Pavilion from taking over the satellite city of the Dali Kingdom, his opponents did not have the power to influence the Dali Imperial Court and ask the Ministry of Justice to take action. Night Rain nodded with a solemn expression. At this moment, there was a noise and a shout from the small courtyard at the door. The constables had arrived. That's it. I'll leave tomorrow's matter to you. Bright Moon illuminating river was a straightforward man. He did not hesitate and took the initiative to walk out of the room. Before Sword Rain followed him out, he heard a shout from the small courtyard. I am Bright Moon illuminating river. Sword Rain shook his head. His big brother was still the same, honest and straightforward. In the small courtyard, at this moment, hundreds of players of the Breeze Pavilion had gathered, and the courtyard was full of people. Seeing that the Pavilion Master had been arrested, everyone looked angry, and their eyes looked murderous. If Cool Breeze had not been maintaining order, these constables would not have been able to walk out of the small courtyard. Seeing this, even the constables' feet trembled a little. Before coming, these constables did not expect to encounter such a big scene. Take him away. The constables did not dare to stay for long. After taking the man, they immediately prepared to leave. If they stayed any longer, he was afraid that his constables would wet their pants. These dissimulated men were really cruel, like wolves and tigers. Waves of murderous intent pervaded the courtyard, making people feel cold. It was no wonder that gathered in the small courtyard were all the elite members of the Breeze Pavilion. Which one of them did not kill people like flies? At this moment, the originally clear night sky suddenly began to drizzle. Bright Moon illuminating river stood in the rain and looked around at the brothers present. Unexpectedly, he grinned and said loudly, Brothers, don't panic. I'm just going to the Ministry of Justice for some tea, and I'll be back soon. Tomorrow's battle, when I'm not here, you can't be lazy. Open your eyes and kill all the enemies of the Breeze Pavilion. After a pause, Bright Moon illuminating river suddenly shouted, Brothers, tell me, can you do it? Yes. Hundreds of people shouted in unison, and the momentum was great. Ha, good. Bright Moon illuminating river laughed heartily, turned to the constables, and said, Your Honor, let's go. He suddenly took the initiative and became the host. Seeing this, the constables did not dare to refuse. A group of people shuttled through the curtain of rain and soon disappeared on the street. The members of the Breeze Pavilion silently watched the back of the Pavilion Master go away, and they shared a common enemy. In the curtain of rain, Cool Breeze was the first to withdraw his gaze. He turned his head and said, Everyone, have an early rest. There will be a big battle tomorrow. Don't let the Pavilion Master down. Everyone nodded in silence and gradually dispersed. Only Cool Breeze and Sword Rain stood in the corridor, looking at each other in silence. They both saw the worry in each other's eyes. There's something fishy about this rain. Chapter 817. Xianyang, the headquarters of the Bloodlust mercenary group. Looking at the mysterious man in front of him, Bloody Romance said expressionlessly, You mean as long as I cooperate with you, I can smoothly take down the satellite city of the royal city of Xianyang? 100%, the mysterious man said firmly. Crimson Romance snickered. What are you laughing at? Bloody Romance looked at him as if he was an idiot and said, You're making a deal with me with something that belongs to me. I say, are you guys out of your minds? You. The mysterious man was born in a noble family and had never been humiliated like this. He was about to lose his temper on the spot. But when he thought of the mission given by the organization, he finally suppressed his anger. The mysterious man said, I don't understand what you mean. Bloody Romance shook his head and said, With or without your help, The satellite city is already in the bag of the bloodlust mercenary group. Do you understand? Arrogant. The mysterious man was finally angry. So, there's no room for negotiation? Blood Romance gestured for him to leave and said, "Have a safe trip. I won't be seeing you out." The mysterious man glanced at Bloody Romance and said in a cold voice, "Don't think that you are really the overlord of Xianyang City. The power of the organization is beyond your imagination. Just wait and see." The mysterious man was in a bad mood after messing up the mission. Bloody Romance's expression didn't change. He made another gesture to see him off. "Humph, you don't know your place." The mysterious man threw down a harsh word and disappeared into the night. When the mysterious man was far away, Bloody Romance's expression changed again. It seemed to be excited, mixed with a trace of hatred. Such a complicated expression was really rare. "Do you think I won't know who you are if you don't tell me?" The hand of silver. The crimson romantic eyes suddenly became cold, overflowing with cold air. He actually knew the existence of the silver hand. The drama in the wilderness was getting more and more interesting. Shanghai City, southern border. Late at night, the noisy city that never slept finally returned to peace. The lively crowd couldn't resist the heavy drowsiness and exhaustion, and gradually dispersed. Only the lanterns were left, stubbornly emitting a weak light in the vast night sky. All kinds of rubbish and sundries were left in the square, testifying to the carnival last night. After watching the lanterns with Song Jia, Ouyang Shua didn't rest, but walked to the study. The large study room was quiet. Under the shroud of the night, it was even somewhat eerie. That familiar figure was nowhere to be seen. Ouyang Shua didn't care. Only here could he really calm down, savor the loneliness, and plan for the territory. Many plans for the territory were made by Ouyang Shua on such nights. Here, in this quiet night, Ouyang Shua's mind was exceptionally clear. While watching the lanterns at night, Ouyang Shua, at his current cultivation level, any trace of abnormality or fluctuation in his heart lake represented something unusual. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua came to the study. He wanted to find the source of the uneasiness. As soon as he sat down, Ouyang Shua saw that there were 2 secret letters on the table, and it was obvious that they had just been delivered during the night. "King," Yang Fei said. "King, sort of thunder as Yang. Moon or king, as is he as long as I have as he is I. Why is sort of thunder writing to me at this time?" Ouyang Shua frowned. Things were getting stranger and stranger. He didn't have many dealings with Sword of Thunder, but Lin Jing, Song Jia, Love Thread, and other women had a close relationship with Sword of Thunder. Most recently, they were discussing an order for weapons and equipment. Did something happen? Do they need to urgently deploy a batch of weapons and equipment? Ouyang Shua could only guess. He didn't dare to delay and open the letter, only to see a short line. "I'm sorry, please be careful." Ouyang Shua couldn't understand. What does it mean? He noticed the names of several guild leaders at the end of the letter. Aren't they the leaders of Luoyang's major guilds? Ouyang Shua was even more confused. Since he couldn't figure it out, Ouyang Shua decided to ignore it and open the letter. He had a premonition that he would find the answer in this letter. Sure enough, Bai Hua was talking about the bright moon illuminating the river being arrested by the Ministry of Justice. Bai Hua's anxiety and uneasiness could be seen in the letter. After reading the letter, Ouyang Shua frowned. He had a premonition that Silver Hand had already started to take action. What Sword of Thunder warned him to be careful of in the letter was probably Silver Hand. In other words, Tingyu Tower had already been taken down by Silver Hand. This is really bad news. Ouyang Shua muttered to himself. Do they want to start from the periphery? His mood was getting heavier. The opponent this time was obviously more difficult to deal with than Yan Huang Alliance. They were calmer and more cunning. They didn't directly attack Shanghai City. Instead, they wanted to take down Shanghai City's periphery layer by layer and then give Shanghai City a fatal blow. This is a very patient opponent, Ouyang Shua concluded. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua first wrote a letter to Bai Hua to reassure him. In the letter, Ouyang Shua roughly explained Silver Hand to Bai Hua and told him to be patient. Ouyang Shuo was worried that Bai Hua would do something impulsive. After sending the letter, Ouyang Shuo's mood was still not relaxed. The night before the opening of the satellite city, Breeze Pavilion and Tingyu Tower were in trouble. What about the other guilds that were related to Shanghai City? Would the top 10 guilds like Baleful Blood Mercenary Group, Laojun Temple, and Flowing Light Pavilion, or even the second-tier guilds like Shadow Tower and Dream Tower, encounter the same trouble? Or did they already encounter trouble but didn't tell him like Sword of Thunder? Ouyang Shuo had no way of knowing. His mind was a mess. He needed to sort it out. In a quiet study room, Ouyang Shuo leaned on the recliner alone, closing his eyes and meditating. His fingers rhythmically tapped on the table. He wanted to peel the silk from the cocoon and tear apart the fog in front of him, but he didn't know where to start. According to Silver Hand, S-Style, since they made a move, it wouldn't be a small fight. Among all the guilds, Snow Death Rose Mercenary Group was the least likely to be defeated by Silver Hand. Silver Hand was probably well aware of the relationship between the two guilds. Ouyang Shuo immediately realized Snow Death Rose is in danger. He wanted to pick up his pen and write a letter to his aunt, Lin Jing, reminding her to be more vigilant. After writing a line, he put down his pen again. No, it's too late. Ouyang Shuo looked up at the night outside the window. It turned out that it was already the second half of the night. In another 3 or 4 hours, it would be dawn. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo didn't hesitate anymore. He decided to go to Jianyu overnight. "Guards, my lord." Hearing the voice, Su Chu, who had been guarding outside the door, came in. Ouyang Shuo said, "Assemble the team and prepare to go out with me." Su Chu nodded and asked, "Should we bring the divine martial guards?" Ouyang Shuo thought for a moment and said, "Bring them." Now that the world was unstable, he didn't dare to take it lightly. "Also, call Xiahou Dun. I'm going to the armory." "Yes." Su Chu turned around and went to make the arrangements. However, Ouyang Shuo still felt a trace of unease. For the first time, he truly felt the great pressure that Silver Hand brought him. "They really think highly of me," Ouyang Shuo muttered to himself. After a while, Xiahou Dun hurried over. Looking at his expression, he was woken up from his sleep by the guards. Even a corner of his clothes was exposed, and he didn't tidy up properly. "My lord!" Before he came, Xiahou Dun splashed his face with cold water to wake him up. Since the lord summoned him in the middle of the night, there was probably something urgent. Xiahou Dun naturally didn't dare to be negligent. Ouyang Shuo said, "Thank you, Lord Xiahou. This humble subject is ashamed." Since the lord was still in the study, how could Xiahou Dun dare to say that it was hard? Time was tight, so Ouyang Shuo didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "How many 3-bow, 8-bull bed crossbows and divine arm crossbows are there in the armory of the War Division?" Ouyang Shuo was worried about Snow Death Rose and wanted to send another batch of equipment overnight. For a guild war, especially to defend a satellite city, there was no weapon stronger than the divine armed crossbows and divine armed crossbows. Even the P1 cannon couldn't compare to the 3-bow, 8-bull bed crossbows in terms of long-lasting damage. Moreover, cannons were inconvenient to carry, so it wasn't a good time to send them over. Xiahou Dun immediately answered, 253-bow, 8-bull bed crossbows and 15,000 divine armed crossbows. The divine armed crossbows were the long-range weapons that the guilds preferred. Most of the guild's orders included divine armed crossbows. Therefore, there weren't many left in the armory. Fortunately, Ouyang Shuo's transport capacity was limited, so he couldn't take too many. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "All right, bring me to the armory. I want to take 103-bow, 8-bull bed crossbows and 5,000 divine armed crossbows. Register it." Even though Ouyang Shuo was a lord, he couldn't just take equipment from the armory. There were rules for everything. If Ouyang Shuo took as he pleased, someone would take advantage of the loophole and use his name to embezzle the armory. If that happened, the rules would be messed up. "Yes." Xiahou Dun nodded and led the way in front. Even if Ouyang Shuo's storage bag had been upgraded to the highest level and had 10,000 cubic meters of space, he still couldn't store such a large amount of equipment. Moreover, other than the crossbows, he also had to carry the corresponding arrows. The arrows for the divine armed crossbows could be prepared by snow death rows, but the jackdaw arrows, treading arrows, and one spear, three sword arrows were unique to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shuo was only responsible for transporting 103 Bao 8 bull bed crossbows and the corresponding arrows. His storage bag was already filled to the brim. The remaining divine armed crossbows were carried by the 3,000 divine martial guards. After finishing his preparations, Ouyang Shuo didn't stop. He led the guards and divine martial guards through the teleportation formation inside Monarch City and quietly disappeared into the night. Chapter 8:18. Jianya, Snow Rose Mercenary Group's headquarters. Just like Shanghai City, Jianya City also had a festive lantern festival. Gaia also launched the Lantern Festival, making the royal city even livelier. After the carnival, not to mention the city square, even the streets were littered with rubbish. Although there were no pedestrians on the streets, there were still lanterns leading the way. Ouyang Shuo and his party walked out of the teleportation array and smoothly arrived at Snow Rose's headquarters. More than 3,000 people walked on the street, carrying a large amount of equipment, but it was silent. Because tomorrow was the battle for the satellite city, Snow Rose's headquarters was loose on the outside and tight on the inside. As soon as Ouyang Shuo and his party arrived at the headquarters, they were seen by the guards and immediately ran to report. Seeing Ouyang Shuo, Lin Jing was greatly shocked and asked, "Little Shuo, it's so late. What are you doing here?" Ouyang Shuo inadvertently glanced at the street outside and said in a low voice, "Let's talk inside." On the way here, he noticed that someone was secretly monitoring Snow Rose's headquarters. This further confirmed Ouyang Shuo's guess. Seeing Ouyang Shuo's strange expression, Lin Jing immediately realized the seriousness of the matter and said, "Come in quickly." After entering the headquarters, Lin Jing arranged for people to receive the divine martial guards and the guards, and led Ouyang Shuo to the president's office. Xie Yun received the news and also rushed over. "Little Shuo, tell me what happened?" Lin Jing asked. Ouyang Shuo didn't know where to start. After all, it was Ouyang Shuo's personal guess that Silverhand was going to deal with the guilds. There was no real evidence, so it was not good to say it clearly. "You're going to fight tomorrow, so I temporarily sent a batch of equipment," Ouyang Shuo said vaguely. Lin Jing was suspicious. "Are you okay? Sending equipment in the middle of the night?" Xie Yun smiled to resolve the awkwardness and said, "Where can I find equipment from the sky?" "What kind of equipment?" Lin Jing asked. Ouyang Shuo said, 103 Bao 8 bull bed crossbows and 5,000 divine armed crossbows. Lin Jing also smiled and said, "That's a big deal." Ouyang Shuo didn't stay for long and said directly, "I got the information that someone is going to harm you in the battle for the satellite city tomorrow. I can't say too much about the specific matter. In short, you have to be fully prepared and don't fail. The opponent this time is not easy to deal with. It's very likely that they're here for me." Lin Jing and Xie Yun looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Even though they were joking, they knew extremely clearly in their hearts that Ouyang Shuo was absolutely not a person that spoke without reason. Since he suddenly paid a visit like this in the middle of the night, then the matter had surely reached an extremely serious state. An enemy that was capable of causing the current Ouyang Shuo to be afraid of it was obvious how strong that enemy was. Lin Jing nodded solemnly and said, "All right, it's not convenient for you to tell me in detail, so I won't ask. With this batch of equipment, we'll have another layer of protection. No matter what tricks the enemy has up their sleeves, we are not to be trifled with." Ouyang Shuo stood up. "Then I'll be leaving first." Ouyang Shuo had already reminded him of what he needed to. As for the outcome of tomorrow's battle, it was better to let Lin Jing and Xie Yun decide. Lords could not directly intervene in the battles for the satellite cities. Leaving behind the equipment, Ouyang Shuo and the divine martial guards hurriedly left the Snow Rose encampment. In the shadow of an alley diagonally opposite Snow Rose's station, there were two men in black robes. Seeing Ouyang Shuo and his entourage walk out of the gate, one of them said, "That's right, it's Hao Wui. What's he doing so late at night?" "How would I know?" The other person said. "Could it be that he found out about us?" "It's impossible. I'm guessing that Dolly's actions made Hao Wui suspicious, so he specially came to warn Snow Rose. According to Di Chun and the others, he's an old fox and very suspicious. Then, should we take this opportunity to kill him?" "How? Didn't you see that he has a large army protecting him? Even if we set up an ambush on the street, it won't be able to trap him. This person is indeed cautious. He came out so late and still has so many guards." "What cautious? I think he's just timid. No matter what, let's not beat the grass and startle the snake. Let's go." "All right, I'll listen to you. That kid is lucky." After a while, the two disappeared into the boundless night. Gaia 4th year, February 14th. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the 9 great royal cities made an announcement at the same time. Royal City Announcement. In order to divert players and explore the mysterious underworld, a satellite city is specially opened. Anyone who obtains a satellite city token and inserts it into the conference hall of the mayor's mansion of the satellite city will automatically obtain the right to defend the satellite city. After 24 hours, other guilds of the royal city can lead troops to attack the satellite city. If the defending guild successfully holds out for 24 hours, it will obtain the right to defend forever. If the attacking guild shatters the stone tablet of the satellite city, it will also obtain the right to defend forever. Along with the royal city announcement, a dazzling golden light flashed on the outskirts of the 9 royal cities at the same time. Like a mushroom cloud from a nuclear explosion, the golden light shot up into the sky. Even 1,000 miles away, it could be seen clearly. When the golden light dissipated, 9 brand new cities stood in the wilderness. Each city was 10 miles long and wide. Whether it was the city walls or the city buildings, they were almost a simplified version of the various royal cities. Even so, it was a majestic city. Countless Lord players drooled at the sight of it. Many of the cities in the wilderness couldn't meet the standards of this satellite city. Just this majestic city was worth tens of millions of gold coins. It was no wonder countless guilds went crazy for it. Of course, according to the information revealed by Gaia, the guild that guarded the satellite city only had the right to use and lease the city. It did not have ownership or mortgage rights. To put it bluntly, the satellite city's guild was equivalent to a city manager. It was in charge of the satellite city's operations and had the right to rent out shops and properties in the city, as well as collect taxes to obtain legal income. Furthermore, half of the city's income had to be handed over to the corresponding royal city's imperial court. Of course, the royal city would not take the income for free. It had the obligation to protect the satellite city's safety. If the Lord of the Wilderness sent troops to attack the satellite city, it was equivalent to attacking the royal city. As such, it greatly increased the satellite city's safety. Otherwise, faced with a fat piece of meat like the satellite city, there was no guarantee that the lords would take the risk and send troops to attack. If that was the case, the Guardian Guild would definitely not be able to defend it. Speaking of which, as the satellite city's guild's right to defend was permanent, and it was already Gaia's 4th year, there was not much difference whether the Guardian Guild had ownership of the satellite city or not. There were 2 reasons for Gaia's rules. First, as the guild did not have ownership of the satellite city, when Gaia calculated the player's game assets after the game ended, the satellite city would not be included in the calculation. This was normal. If the guild obtained such a city through a major battle, ignoring the dissatisfaction of other players, it would be unfair to the Lord players. Witchlord's city wasn't built from scratch and slowly built from scratch. Second, as the guild did not have ownership or mortgage rights to the satellite city, the Guardian Guild could not transfer the satellite city, nor could they use the satellite city as a mortgage to obtain loans. This was to prevent players from taking advantage of loopholes. As the battle for the satellite city had not begun, Gaia did not disclose the underworld entrance for the time being. It was unknown if it would be a teleportation portal or a physical entrance. If it was a physical entrance, Would there be a situation where the underworld monsters would counterattack the satellite city? There was also the issue of access to the underworld entrance that was not disclosed. Did it require the Guardian Guild's permission, or could all players from the royal city enter? There was also the issue of whether there was a fee. Everything would only be revealed after the dust had settled in the battle for the satellite town. According to the information disclosed in the announcement, the entire battle for the satellite city could be divided into 2 stages. The first stage was to find the satellite city token and break through the various obstacles to insert the token into the satellite city's Castellan Manor's meeting hall, activating the satellite city and temporarily becoming the city's master. After activating the city, non-Guardian Guild players will be teleported out of the city by Gaia. The Guardian Guild would have a day to prepare and organize the city's defenses. At the same time, a certain number of NPC troops would spawn in the city to assist in the defense. Of course, there would not be too many NPC troops. The main force would be the Guardian Guild players. Following that, it would be the second stage, which was the guild battle stage. One guild would defend, and the remaining guilds would attack. The guilds that lost in the first stage had already lost the initiative. Therefore, in the second stage, they would attack the satellite city at all costs, fighting for their last chance of survival. At this time, strategy was important. For the Guardian Guild, it was to restrain their allies as much as possible, preventing them from participating in the siege so as to reduce the pressure on the defense. As for getting allies to help defend the city, Gaia would not allow it. For the sieging guilds, it was even more complicated. Not only did they have to contact the other guilds to attack the city, but they also had to be wary of each other or come to a tacit understanding ahead of time, or even sign an agreement. This was because even if they conquered the satellite city, there was only one guild that could ultimately shatter the city's stone monument. Faced with such a huge temptation, no one knew what would happen until the very last moment. At the same time, due to the uncertainty of the first stage, the siege of the 9 capital cities would not be synchronized. For this, Gaia would seal off all the teleportation arrays in the capital cities before the 9 capital cities' satellite cities were established as Guardian Guilds. In this battle, unaffiliated players without guilds had no right to participate. They were basically marginal characters. Gaia did not even allow unaffiliated players to participate in the second stage of the siege. This was also to control the variables as much as possible. Gaia did not want the overall standard of wilderness players to regress because of the intense battles. Right at this moment, another announcement sounded. Royal City announcement. The satellite city token will be randomly refreshed to a player in the Royal City. The token cannot be placed in a storage bag. It will be dropped upon death. The system will automatically refresh the token's coordinates every 10 minutes. With that, the most tragic battle of the first year officially began. Chapter 819. It would drop upon death, and the coordinates would be updated at any time. Gaia's setting of the satellite city token drop mechanism vividly reflected the cruelty of the war. With the second announcement from the capital, 9 lucky ones immediately appeared from the 9 great capital cities. They stared at the satellite city token that suddenly appeared in their hands in a daze. However, the lucky ones were not really lucky. What followed was a massacre. Once the killing started, it would never stop. Some people died under the enemy's sword the moment they obtained the token. Others hid in fear, but ultimately, they could not escape their doom. There were also those who were extremely confident, believing that they were fated, but they did not expect it to be a dream. The moment the satellite city token appeared, it would constantly circulate in the hands of different people. This was no treasure token, it was a death warrant. Whoever had it would be unlucky. What was even worse was that the token could not be traded to others. It could not even be thrown away. It was like a dogskin plaster. Either it was inserted into the city Lord Manor's meeting hall, or it would wait for the next person to take it. Gaia had set it up in such a way to prevent guilds from playing any tricks. The token's coordinates would be refreshed every 10 minutes. If it was cleverly designed, it was possible to directly transfer the token to the satellite city. Secondly, It was to prevent any bastard from throwing the token into a river, a smelly ditch, or even off a cliff, whether it was to avoid trouble or out of some kind of dark intention. There were even some special terrains that did not appear. That would become a farce. In the beginning, the token was only in the hands of a few people. The massacre was limited to a dozen people, a few dozen people, and at most 100. When the token landed in the hands of a large or medium-sized guild, it would lead to a chaotic war between the guilds. The number of people killed was like a rolling snowball, growing bigger and bigger. More and more players were embroiled in this massacre. Some people had no choice but to do it, while others took the initiative to fight. Most of them were fighting for the guild's interests. The satellite city was just too tempting, so much so that the players gradually lost their rationality. Even some medium-sized guilds were unwilling to give up the token despite knowing that they did not have the strength to protect it. If we don't give it a try, how do we know it's impossible? Who knows, we might succeed. The players held on to a wishful thinking. Without the guild leader's encouragement, the members took the initiative to fight. The slaughter spread, and the killing intent gathered, gradually affecting the players' minds. As time passed, the battlefield gradually moved from the capital to the outskirts, slowly moving in the direction of the satellite town. At the end of the battle, some players' eyes were bloodshot. Originally, the only reason for the players to kill each other was to fight for the satellite town token. But in the end, because of the slaughter, countless karma was sown out of thin air. The purpose of the massacre was gradually expanding. His brother was killed, so he had to take revenge, right? How could he bear it when his lover was killed? A guild member had been killed. Shouldn't they seek revenge? All sorts of karma entangled with each other. Just as one was settled, more killing karma was born. It was endless. The desire to kill among the players had never been as exuberant as it was today. Like adding oil to a raging fire, the more it burned, the more the players' rationality and brains were burned away. The only thing left in their eyes was slaughter. The desire to kill hidden in the depths of every player's heart. This invisible beast seemed to have been completely released. All of its shackles were removed, and it became unbridled. Perhaps this was also one of the charms of the game. Killing in the game didn't require legal responsibility, especially during the system's mission period. There was no red mark, and the capital's constables wouldn't come looking for trouble. There was no need to go to jail. The players were even more unbridled when they killed each other. For some PK fanatics, this was simply a feast of slaughter. However, no matter how the satellite town token was passed around, it would eventually return to the hands of the large guilds because only they had the strength to protect the token. On this day, the wilderness wasn't the main character. The 9 great capitals were the focus of the whole world. After the announcement from the capital, Ouyang Shuo didn't go anywhere. He just sat in a study, constantly paying attention to the developments of the battle for the satellite towns. The 9 great capitals all opened posts on the forums, tracking and reporting in real time. He sat there for the whole morning, but there was still no result. Until after 3 in the afternoon, the 9 tokens had basically all fallen into the hands of the major guilds. Next was a battle to break out of the encirclement. The guilds would mobilize all their forces and escort them all the way to the satellite towns. The other guilds naturally wouldn't let this go. The players' calculations were very shrewd. Even if they couldn't stop the target guild from sending the token to the satellite towns, they would still peel off a layer of skin from the other party. In the following siege battle, they would weaken the defending guild's strength. The target guild basically had to walk through mountains of corpses and seas of blood to get there. The major guilds weren't stupid. They wouldn't easily waste their strength on the first day. At this time, the role of allies was shown. The allies protected the outer circle while the people from the major guilds were in the inner circle. The deception and deceit in the process were simply too many to count. The later it got, the more intense the fighting became. The players' hearts were like a mirror. At night, everything was pitch black, and things would be difficult. The target guild could arrange for people to sneak through the human wall and enter the satellite towns. Therefore, by evening, the first stage of the competition between the 9 major guilds was basically concluded. Based on the current situation, there weren't any dark horses in the 9 great capitals. The competition in some of the king cities was strangely mild. This included the Yin-Huang alliances Xiangyang and Chang'an cities. The 18 steeds of Swallow and Cloud and the embroidered uniform guard didn't meet with any obstacles. The number of allies that assisted the 2 major guilds during the day was unexpectedly many. No one would have thought that the 2 major guilds would have such strong rallying power. Based on the current situation, it was almost certain that the 2 guilds would take down Satellite Town in the end. Apart from that, Quanzhou's Flowing Light Pavilion, Chengdu's Laojun Temple, and Luoyang's Tingyu Tower, these 3 allied guilds of Shanghai City, were also progressing smoothly and didn't meet with too many obstacles. Ouyang Shuo could tell that there was something fishy going on. On the contrary, the 2 strongest guilds in the China server, Xianyang's Baleful Blood Mercenaries and Jianye's Snow Rose Mercenaries, met with unimaginable resistance. Some of the allies suddenly turned against each other and joined the encirclement. Fortunately, the 2 major guilds were strong and prepared, so the situation was still under control. The most uncomfortable one was the Breeze Pavilion in Dali. Last night, Pavilion Master Bright Moon Illuminates the River was captured, which affected the guild's morale. What was worse was that more than 70% of the guilds in Dali participated in the encirclement against Cool Breeze Pavilion. Although the Breeze Pavilion had protected the token of the satellite town, they had suffered heavy losses. Based on the number of casualties, it would be hard for Cool Breeze Pavilion to defend the satellite towns. The capital was not peaceful either. It wasn't strange that crisscrossing Sword Aura and Star Alliance teamed up to fight against Shadow Alliance and Dream House. What was strange was that there were many guilds that supported the former. The 2 sides were originally evenly matched, but the balance was heavily tilted in favor of crisscrossing Sword Aura. The satellite town's token of the capital was currently in the hands of crisscrossing Sword Aura. Night fell, and the first phase of the battle for the satellite towns of the 9 great royal cities was over. The 9 major guilds activated the satellite towns one by one. Only then did the crowd gradually disperse. The forum was still very lively, and everyone was discussing the battle during the day. Even if they weren't the main characters, the players were still excited. This kind of group PvP between players was different from a battle between a territory's army. Since both sides were players, it was only natural that it would be more cruel and exciting. The players' adrenaline levels skyrocketed. In reality, everyone was living in a peaceful era, so how could they have the chance to participate in such a hot-blooded battle? The players who had a new lease on life used 4 words to describe the battle during the day: satisfying. In this chaotic battle, a new batch of superstars emerged. They were brave and fierce in PvP, killing their enemies like flies and leading their troops on the battlefield. They were invincible, decisive, and had the demeanor of ancient generals. After the battle, these superstars were all put in important positions by their guilds and received promotions and rewards. They instantly became the stars of the adventurer players and were worshipped by countless players. There were even rumors that some leaders of guilds had their eyes on these superstars and wanted to recruit them as valiant generals. As soon as this news came out, the fame of the superstars rose to an even higher level. Ouyang Shuo felt that there was an invisible hand pushing and packaging this batch of supernovas behind the scenes. The attentive Ouyang Shuo realized that these so-called superstars were basically all from the Yin-Huang Alliance faction. Using this opportunity to promote a group of star players, this was to further increase the fame of the Yin-Huang Alliance. Among these supernovas were there disciples of those secret families. They used this opportunity to become famous, and even though they started later, they arrived first. What a brilliant move! Ouyang Shuo was more and more impressed by his opponents. They weren't simple at all. Heroes were sought after and enjoyed the limelight, but the countless players who died and reincarnated were ignored. They were like a group of losers who could only silently watch the rise of the superstars, becoming stepping stones for them. The wilderness was just this cruel cruel to the point where there wasn't a trace of humanity. Some people were discouraged and decided to become life profession players, while others were unwilling to give up and decided to fight again. To the latter, the dojos that were opened in the capital seemed to be a good choice. They were starting from zero and walking on a different path of development. Therefore, this chaotic battle between guilds unexpectedly caused the dojos to become popular. In less than an hour, all sorts of statistics were calculated on the forums. When the players saw this, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. According to incomplete statistics, in just one day, the number of people who died in the 9 great capital cities exceeded 1 million. One had to know that the people who died this time were all combat profession players in their prime. With this calculation, the ratio was very shocking. It was equivalent to 1 out of 20. Chapter 820. In addition to the statistics, the forum was also discussing the battle situation in the 9 king cities during the day. The outsiders were getting more and more confused about the battle for the satellite cities. The 18 steeds of Yin and Yin and the embroidered uniform guards of the Yin Huang Alliance were having an easy time, while the Snow Death Rose mercenary group and the Breeze Pavilion of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas were having a hard time. Some people said that the Yin Huang Alliance had the upper hand. However, it could be said that the Yin Huang Alliance was attacking the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, but the Flowing Light Pavilion, Laojun Temple, and Pavilion of the Rain were progressing smoothly. The situation was confusing, and no one could see through it. How could the players know that these 3 guilds had quietly changed sides? As such, in reality, the Yin Huang Alliance had the upper hand in this battle for the satellite city. The Alliance of Mountains and Seas was in danger. Ouyang Shuo saw this and knew what was going on. The Tingyu Pavilion, as Thunder Sword Chi, still had some conscience. At least he gave Ouyang Shuo a warning and said goodbye. However, the Laojun Temple, as Taoist Priest Green Bull, and the Flowing Light Pavilion, Elder June were bastards. They secretly changed sides without saying a word. I'll settle this score with you. Ouyang Shuo's eyes flashed with coldness. February 25th, a day of rest. The guilds that were qualified to defend the 9 king cities were the busiest on this day. They had to defend the satellite cities and prepare for tomorrow's siege. They also had to strengthen their allies and form alliances, especially the baleful Blood Mercenary Group, Snow Death Rose Mercenary Group, and Breeze Pavilion. They had to make the last connection on this day. The Silver Hand was indeed powerful, but it was not powerful enough to cover the sky. The reason why the Yin Huang Alliance, as camp progressed smoothly in the battle for the satellite cities yesterday, was that the Silver Hand controlled more than 10 large guilds suddenly changed sides. Their temporary change became the key factor that changed the balance of power. Now it all depended on who was more skilled. The Breeze Pavilion was undoubtedly pitiful. The Pavilion Master was locked in the Ministry of Justice's prison at the crucial moment, which made their allies suspicious. The strategy of a Silver Hand was undoubtedly brilliant. In the first stage, they were not in a hurry to show up and snatch the token of the Dali Royal City satellite city. That was because none of the dozen large guilds controlled by the Silver Hand had the confidence to resist the siege of the Breeze Pavilion and its allies in the second stage of the siege. So they played a trick. In the first phase, he would let the Breeze Pavilion be the target. In the second phase, he would execute the Wolf Pack strategy and take down the Breeze Pavilion. Even though the Breeze Pavilion knew the enemy's plan, they had to follow the script. As the largest guild in the capital of Dali and one of the top 10 guilds in the China region, the Breeze Pavilion had its own pride. Some things had to be fought for and resisted. By 5 or 6 p.m., the 24-hour cooldown was over. One after another, guilds from the 9 king cities launched probing attacks on the satellite cities to find out the truth. Of course, this was just the appetizer. It only took an hour. By the time night fell, the outside of Satellite Town was already dotted with flames. The guilds who were interested had long since set up camp outside the satellite city, seizing advantageous attacking positions and waiting for tomorrow's battle. The next morning, when the sun had just risen, A large number of attacking guilds didn't give the defending guilds any time to rest and immediately began to attack the city. They weren't an army, so they didn't pay attention to obedience and didn't have any tactics. Their only strategy was to overwhelm the satellite city with their numbers. Therefore, they had to race against time. Ouyang Shuo sat peacefully in Shanghai City, and he already had a basic plan for the battle for the satellite cities. It seemed that the decline of the League of Mountains and Seas Guild Alliance was a fait accompli. Except for the Flowing Light Pavilion, the Laojun Temple, and the Tingyu Tower, which had joined the Yanhuan Alliance, the Dream Pavilion and the Shadow Alliance in the capital probably couldn't beat the unstoppable Sword Aura. What was worse was that the Breeze Pavilion, the core ally of Shanghai City, probably couldn't protect the satellite city. What Ouyang Shuo was most concerned about was whether the Snow Rose mercenary group could survive this wave. If Snow Death Rose fell as well, then Alliance of Mountains and Seas Guild Alliance would fall as well. Hopefully, the equipment he sent over last night would be able to save the day. Ouyang Shuo didn't do nothing these 2 days. He had already ordered the Black Snake Guards that hadn't left the China region to mobilize all the spies in the capital, Jianya, Dali, and even Xianyang. They were either to create chaos and division in the guilds controlled by the Silver Hand, or to build bridges in the neutral guilds. The resistance that the baleful blood mercenary group encountered in the first stage made Ouyang Shuo realize that the strongest guild in China region hadn't been taken down by the Silver Hand yet. Ouyang Shuo naturally wanted to help if he could. When the traditional allies were falling, Ouyang Shuo didn't want to let go of any opportunity to form an alliance. In short, Ouyang Shuo had done everything he could. He even wanted to send a batch of equipment to the Breeze Pavilion, but the teleportation array in the capital was closed by Gaia, so Ouyang Shuo couldn't do anything. At this point, they could only rely on themselves. Ouyang Shuo, the leader of the alliance, had to consider how to deal with the post-war situation. Judging from the behavior of Di Chun and the others, the Silver Hand was definitely a ruthless existence. Since they had instigated the Flowing Light Pavilion and the other guilds to defect, they would not be satisfied with just taking down the satellite town. After the war, they would definitely have other plans. Ouyang Shuo first thought of the Four Seas Bank. The rain-savoring building owned 5% of the shares of the Bank of the Four Seas, while the Liuguang Pavilion and the Laojun Temple each owned 3% of the shares. The three together had 11% of the shares, which was already a force that could not be ignored. Withdrawing from the Four Seas Bank and going into the arms of Huitong Bank was almost a foreseeable thing. What was even more vicious was that they would use this as an opportunity to attack the Four Seas Bank's business in the Nine King City. The Bank of the Four Seas was an important tool for Ouyang Shuo to exert his influence on the grassroots players. It was also a major financial pillar of the territory. Ouyang Shuo would never allow it to be destroyed by the Silver Hand. Thinking up to here, Ouyang Shuo immediately summoned the head shopkeeper of the Four Seas Bank, Meng Jida. Coincidentally, Ouyang Shuo and the other ministers were discussing the structure of the dynasty, and the Bank of the Four Seas also needed to make some adjustments. The two matters could be discussed together. As for the specific situation of the battle for the satellite town, Ouyang Shuo was already not in the mood to pay attention to it. Half an hour later, Meng Jida hurried over. The business of the Bank of the Four Seas was closely related to the guild. Meng Jida had a keen sense of smell and naturally had been paying attention to the progress of the battle for the satellite town. Hearing that Jun Shang had summoned him, his heart skipped a beat. Meng Jida had a hunch that what Jun Shang wanted to talk to him was related to the current battle royale. After sitting down, he did not expect Jun Shang to talk about another matter. Ouyang Shuo said, "Jida, when the territory is established, we need to form a cabinet. Have you heard about this?" "I have." Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "After the country is established, in principle, the general administration of finance will be promoted to the finance department. Only one thing, the Bank of the Four Seas will be separated from the future finance department. It will be directly under the cabinet and run parallel to the finance department." This, Meng Jida did not know how to respond. Meng Jida was naturally happy that the Bank of the Four Seas was upgraded and no longer restricted by the finance department. But at the moment, the Bank of the Four Seas was still under the leadership of the General Administration of Finance, and family was still his direct superior. Therefore, Meng Jida really could not comment on this matter, and it was better to remain silent. Ouyang Shuo smiled and said, "Since I have informed you in advance, there is nothing to be afraid of. Upgrading the Bank of the Four Seas is not an expansion of power, but because of the needs of the future dynasty. In the future, the Bank of the Four Seas will need to take on the related functions of the central bank. The burden on your shoulders is not easy. As the leader of the Federation's banking industry, you should be clearer than me about the understanding and position of the central bank, right? In reality, the central bank was an institution established by the government. It was responsible for controlling the country's money supply, credit conditions, and supervising the financial system, especially commercial banks and other savings institutions. The responsibilities of the central bank included the unified issuance of money, centralized custody of commercial banks' reserves, acting as the national treasury, acting as an agent for the issuance of government bonds, managing foreign exchange, and so on. Another point was that the central bank was not for profit, but to serve the country's macroeconomic goals. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo said that the Bank of the Four Seas only took on part of the responsibilities of the central bank. In the future, the Bank of the Four Seas would need to operate globally and could not be considered as a pure central bank. Meng Jida naturally understood and said, "I understand." Ouyang Shuo stopped there and then talked about the possibility of Tingyu Tower and the other guilds withdrawing their investment. If they withdraw their investment, do we have any countermeasure? Ouyang Shuo asked. Meng Jida listened and did not panic. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, ruler. When the guilds invested, they all signed a legally binding agreement. According to the breach of contract clause, if the shareholders unilaterally withdraw their investment, the Bank of the Four Seas has the right to deduct half of the share capital as a penalty." Ouyang Shuo smiled. That is indeed enough for them to suffer. When the guilds invested, each share was valued at 200,000 gold coins. The three big guilds had 11% of the shares. If half of the share capital was deducted, they would have to pay a total of 1,100,000 gold coins as a penalty. To the guilds, this was not a small sum. Meng Jida continued, "Other than the share capital, if they withdraw the savings deposited in the Bank of the Four Seas. According to the agreement, as a shareholder, the funds deposited in the Bank of the Four Seas are calculated according to a fixed period of 3 years. If they withdraw it before the deadline, they will not get a single cent of interest." Ouyang Shuo nodded. He was clear about this. During the auction last year, Bloody Romance and Xie withdrew 2 sums of money, but they did not get a single copper coin of interest. This was equivalent to saying that Tingyu Tower and the other guilds had deposited a large sum of money in the Bank of the Four Seas and let the Bank of the Four Seas use it for a year without getting any return on their investment. If inflation was taken into account, they would even lose money. Chapter 821. Ouyang Shuo was still worried and asked Meng Jida, "If Tingyu Tower and the other guilds withdraw their savings funds at the same time, will there be an impact on the Bank of the Four Seas business?" Meng Jida said, "There will definitely be some impact, but it doesn't matter much. After a year of development, the Bank of the Four Seas has a very rich source of savings and no longer relies on large amounts of savings. What if there are more than 100 large and medium-sized guilds withdrawing their savings funds at the same time?" Ouyang Shuo had a taste of the influence of the Silver Hand. Since Silver Hand could influence these guilds, they could naturally make them withdraw their funds. When Meng Jida heard this, his expression turned solemn. He said, "If that's the case, the Bank of the Four Seas will definitely experience a period of turmoil. If we take precautions in advance, it shouldn't hurt our foundation." Ouyang Shuo nodded his head, feeling slightly more at ease. In the future, the Bank of the Four Seas will focus on individual investors. Only by establishing a solid foundation among the grassroots will we be able to remain invincible. My lord is right. It was time for the Bank of the Four Seas to change. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, "Go and make preparations. Make a contingency plan. I reckon that when the battle for the satellite cities is settled, they will take action." "Understood. Your humble servant will take his leave." Meng Jida turned and left. Ouyang Shuo continued to stay in the study, waiting for the final outcome of the battle for the satellite cities. February 26th, 3 in the afternoon. At this point in the siege war, the situation was gradually becoming clear. The huge sacrifice finally woke up the small and medium-sized guilds. Looking around, there were only a few brothers left. It was truly chilling. After the players died, the dropped equipment was scattered at the foot of the city walls. Many of the equipment were not picked up in time and were all taken away by Gaia. It made the players who died cry. The only ones still fighting in the 9 king cities were Dali, Janya, and Xianying. Even the capital's Single Dream Brothel and Shadow Alliance had given up after paying a heavy price. At around 4 in the afternoon, Silverhand finally suffered setback. Under heavy siege, Janya's Snow Morning Rose mercenary group and Xianying's Baleful Blood mercenary group still stood firm, allowing Silverhand to see what a giant's foundation was. In desperation, Silverhand could only give up. They had no choice but to give up. Even if the leaders of the guilds they controlled were willing to attack, their subordinates wouldn't be willing to die for nothing. The leader of a guild in the game, especially in a game like Earth on Lu that involved real interests, couldn't decide the life and death of a guild member with a single word. No one was a fool. The only one that was still struggling was the Breeze Pavilion in Dali. In the first phase of the war, the Breeze Pavilion had already suffered heavy losses, and now they were betrayed by their allies, which made their situation even worse. The attacking guilds saw hope and gritted their teeth to continue fighting. The Breeze Pavilion was about to collapse. When Ouyang Shuo saw this, his expression became gloomy. There were many things that even he was powerless to change. At 6:15, a Royal City announcement sounded. Royal City announcement. Congratulations to Xiao Nianying for leading the Xiao Alliance to break through the satellite city guarded by the Breeze Pavilion, obtaining the right to permanently guard the satellite city of Dali Royal City. Congratulations, player. When the announcement came out, the world was in an uproar. The originally inconspicuous guild, Xiao Alliance, leaped to fame and became the biggest dark horse in the battle for the satellite city, becoming famous in the wilderness. At this point, the Silver Hand had basically achieved its goal of dismembering the League of Mountains and Seas, Guild Alliance. Among the guild alliances that originally had absolute dominance in the China region, only the Snow Death Rose was left to maintain their position as the overlord of the royal city. Even if the Baleful Blood mercenary group was included, there were only 2 guilds left. What about the Silver Hand? 7 out of 9, it could be said to be in the limelight. By evening, the 9 great royal cities' satellite city guardian guilds had all settled, and there were no more surprises. Gaia was also efficient, immediately announcing the operating rules of the satellite city and the opening rules of the entrance to the underground world. According to the rules, although the guardian guilds had the right to use the satellite city, they had no right to keep players out. In other words, players could freely enter and exit the satellite city. However, Gaia didn't care if they could rent houses and shops in the city. The Guardian Guilds could use this to further strengthen their alliance and solidify their position as the overlord of the royal city. The entrance to the underground world was a physical entrance, located in the central square. Through a staircase that led downwards, one could enter the mysterious underground world. The entrance was open to all players, and the Guardian Guilds had no right to stop them. Gaia's rules were to prevent the Guardian Guilds from monopolizing the underground world and infringing on the interests of ordinary players. This was not in line with the fairness of the game, nor was it in line with the original intent of the game. The entrance to the underground world was a two-way street. One of the important duties of the Guardian Guilds was to guard the entrance and prevent the creatures of the underground world from charging into the satellite city. February 27th, Shanghai City. Under Ouyang Shuo's invitation, Shadow Alliance's Alliance Master, Shadow Fox, Dreamless Brothel's Tower Master, Dream Cloud's Devourer, as well as Breeze Pavilion's Tower Master. Bright Moon Illuminates the River, who had just been released by the Ministry of Justice, gathered in Shanghai City. Having just lost the satellite city, the trio were rather depressed. Ouyang Shua's invitation to the trio was meant to appease them. He said, "If I'm not wrong, when a lord city is promoted to a capital city, it will likely open similar satellite city." Really? The trio's eyes lit up. Ouyang Shua said, "A capital city is on the same level as a system's royal city. Gaia won't favor one over the other. Shanghai City will reach the population limit of 2 million this week and can apply to be promoted to a capital city. If you still trust me as the Alliance Master, please don't be impatient and bear with it for now. Once Shanghai City is promoted to a capital city, everything will be clear. Even if the capital city doesn't open the satellite city, Shanghai City will have the strength to take down a royal city in the future." Bright Moon Illuminates the River's eyes lit up when he heard that. That's right. Those despicable people who hide in the shadows can flaunt their might for a while. But in the wilderness, strength speaks louder. Ignoring the distant future, if Shanghai City were to send troops to take down Dali County, the satellite city would naturally be regained. With this in mind, Bright Moon Illuminates the River's emotions immediately calmed down. He never doubted that Shanghai City had the strength to take down Dali. It was just a matter of how much Shanghai City was willing to sacrifice. Hope reignited in Jiyinghu and Dream Cloud's Devourer. They had been defeated by rampaging Sword Chi only because they were lacking in strength. It had nothing to do with Shanghai City. On the contrary, if not for the equipment Shanghai City sold them and the information they provided, they would have lost even more miserably. They could not ask for more from their Alliance Master, Ouyang Shua. But even under such circumstances, Ouyang Shua still made such a promise. It was truly touching. Jiyinghu said, "Don't worry, we can wait. While the guild is a little unstable right now, we can use this opportunity to clean up our internal affairs. We can slim down and travel with light equipment." His words were filled with respect for Ouyang Shua. Dream Cloud's Devourer nodded firmly as well. They finally understood what it meant to see a friend in need. With an Alliance Master like this, even if we lose, we won't feel wronged. The four of them chatted for a while longer before going their separate ways. From this day onwards, the relationship between Shanghai City and the three great guilds had improved. If Ouyang Shua could fulfill his promise today, he would be able to tie the three guilds tightly together. The 9 Guardian guilds had just taken down the satellite city, so they were extremely busy. The enthusiasm of the players gradually died down. They thought that the wilderness would be peaceful for a while. Who would have thought that after just one morning, a storm would appear again? At 2 in the afternoon, Tower of the Rain, Flowing Light Pavilion, and Lao Junguan made a joint statement announcing that they would leave the Shanghai Alliance, Guild Alliance, and would join the Yanhuang Alliance. At the same time, the 3 guilds would also withdraw their funds from the Bank of the Four Seas and invest in the Bank of Huitong. Naturally, they would also withdraw their funds from the Bank of the Four Seas and deposit them into the Bank of Huitong. Soon after, more than 100 large and medium-sized guilds made a statement as well, collectively withdrawing their funds from the Bank of the Four Seas and depositing them into the Bank of Huitong. Once the news spread, it shook the entire wilderness. Everyone realized that a huge storm was about to arrive. Only then did the players realize that there was something fishy about the battle for the satellite city. The fact that the Yanhuang Alliance had won the battle for the satellite city was an undeniable fact, and this fact was out of everyone's expectations. Everyone thought that after the Yanhuang Alliance lost in Yunnan, their backyard was on fire, and that they would have to lay low for a long time. Who would have thought that the Yanhuang Alliance's counterattack would be so swift and fierce? If the Yanhuang Alliance has this kind of power in the guild circle, why did they wait until now to act? Are they sick in the head again? The smarter players saw through the trick. Just as everyone was confused, The Bank of the Four Seas made a statement. The statement said that the Bank of the Four Seas was a bank with a mature system, allowing all withdrawal of funds within the framework of the contract, and welcomed all new partners. The withdrawal of funds would not cause any unrest to the bank, because the bank's foundation was deeply buried in the player community. As long as the players still trusted Shanghai City, the bank's foundation would be stable. Shanghai City, which was about to be established, was the strongest backing of the Bank of the Four Seas. Finally, the statement also gave blessings to the withdrawing guilds, wishing that these guilds would be able to obtain an excellent user experience and generous investment returns in the new bank. Even an idiot could see the mockery in the statement. A year had passed, and the two banks had already determined who was stronger. The Bank of Huitong practiced what it meant to be a capitalist wolf, and with the help of the Black Snake Guards, they were covered in scandals. Some time ago, it was revealed that the Bank of Huitong had a double standard for both non-members and members of the Yan-Huang Alliance, violating the rights of the shareholders. That incident almost caused the Bank of Huitong to become the target of public criticism. Now that these guilds had suddenly switched to the Bank of Huitong, even an idiot could see that there was something fishy going on. There must be other factors behind this, and it wasn't a normal investment choice. Chapter 822. The announcement from the Bank of the Four Seas put the defected guilds, such as Tingyu Tower, in an awkward position. In addition to the players who were watching for fun, the members of these guilds also questioned the decision of their president and demanded a reasonable explanation. Given that Huitong Bank had a bad record of giving kickbacks, some players questioned whether this stupid transfer of assets was a transfer of benefits, which would harm the interests of the guilds. For a moment, Tingyu Tower and the other guilds were in turmoil, which cast a shadow over the happy atmosphere of taking over the satellite town. However, after the guilds established their overlord status, the members cared more about their own interests. Seeing this, the originally affected individual investors were completely relieved, and they would not be stupid enough to invest in Huitong Bank. The announcement that Meng Jida had prepared in advance had perfectly resolved the storm of retreating into nothingness. Some of the tricks in the dark could not be put on the table after all. Taoist priest Green Bull and the other two were even more livid. Faced with the huge liquidated damages proposed by the Bank of the Four Seas, they were already furious, but they did not expect such a thing. The agreement was written in black and white, and they could not deny it, so they had to swallow their grievances. They were already annoyed enough, and with the internal turmoil, they had to take the trouble to appease the members, which made them anxious and destroyed their good mood of victory. Thunder Sound's sword felt a little remorseful. The fact that Snow Rose could protect the satellite town proved that Silverhand was not as terrible as they said. Maybe with a good operation, Tingyu Tower could take over the satellite town with their own strength. If that was the case, they would not have to be threatened by Silverhand, which was really frustrating. At this moment, Bloody Romance came out to join in the fun again. Ouyang Shuo and Bloody Romance issued a joint statement that Shanghai City and Baleful Blood Mercenary Group had become iron-blooded allies, and they would advance and retreat together in the wilderness. Before, the relationship between the two was just a normal cooperation, but this time it was a complete success. With the support of Baleful Blood Mercenary Group, Shanghai Alliance's forces in the north were not completely annihilated. Don't forget that Bloody Romance had the underground world map incomplete. Baleful Blood Mercenary Group, which had the satellite town of Xianyang, was destined to be one step ahead in exploring the underground world. Baleful Blood Mercenary Group's position as the first guild in China was still unshakable. Aside from Ouyang Shuo, no one knew the reason for Bloody Romance's sudden change in attitude. In the afternoon, Bloody Romance paid a surprise visit to Shanghai City. The two of them spoke for less than an hour before they came up with a joint statement. Ouyang Shuo learned more secrets about Silverhand from Bloody Romance. Towards this mysterious organization, Ouyang Shuo became more and more cautious. On this day, the various dramas played out one after another, dazzling and confusing the players. Shanghai City's counterattack came to an end for the time being. Ouyang Shaw had also considered whether he should let the Black Snake Guards quietly spread the news about Silver Hand to arouse the indignation of the grassroots players. After some thought, he gave up on the idea because the time was not ripe yet. Now that the Silver Hand was exposed, it was more likely that the grassroots players would not be indignant, but they would be in awe and not dare to be enemies with it. On the contrary, it would put Shanghai City in an awkward situation. Once the interests of the game were linked to the interests of the real world, there wouldn't be so many hot-blooded people who wouldn't care about the rewards. In the future, the only ones who could be relied on were the players who moved to Shanghai City. This was because the two sides were bound together for good or bad. That was why Ouyang Shua said that the time was not ripe yet. The game had only been in Gaia for 4 years, so Ouyang Shua had the patience to slowly deal with Silver Hand. Right now, it was more important to promote Shanghai City to a capital city as soon as possible. Gaia 4th year, March 1st, Shanghai City. In less than 5 months, Shanghai City's population reached the upper limit of 2 million. This was under the premise that the Civil Affairs Bureau strictly screened the immigrants. Otherwise, 1 million people could be gathered in 4 months. In the main hall of the Southern Border Protectorate, Ouyang Shua opened the Territory Control Panel and clicked on the application for territory promotion. A series of system notifications sounded in his ears. It was a series of basic conditions. System notification, testing Shanghai City's application for promotion. Condition 1. Population reaches the upper limit of 2 million. Requirements met. Condition 2. All basic buildings have been completed. Requirements met. Speaking of basic buildings, one had to mention the astronomical observatory of a level 3 county city. As Luo Yin had always been elusive, the Enyang school had been in seclusion, which worried Ouyang Shaw. The construction of the observatory was completed a few days ago. After Jiang Shan agreed to be the cabinet chief, he learned of Ouyang Shua's difficulties and personally contacted Luo Yin. Although Luo Yin was unwilling to leave the mountain, he sent 2 disciples on Jiang Shan's account. As such, the astronomical observatory was completed. Condition 3. Lord's title must be at least Duke. Requirements met. Ouyang Shua had already been promoted to Duke back when he was sailing. Half a year had passed, and he had earned quite a lot of merit points. However, he was still far from becoming a king. Thankfully, the lowest requirement for establishing a country was Duke. There was no rush. Condition 4. Political, economic, cultural, and military indices must not be lower than 90 points. Technology index must not be lower than 80 points. Requirements met. Compared to a level 3 county city, the requirements for the 5 territorial indices to be promoted to a capital city were higher. Condition 5. Possess at least 3 counties. Requirements met. According to normal development, when a territory was promoted to a level 3 county city, it had to occupy at least 1 county. Otherwise, it would not be promoted. The requirement for a capital city tripled, equivalent to more than half a province. Thus, even though China was vast when the capital city era came, the number of wilderness lords would be few and far between. When that time came, it would be a true struggle for hegemony. Condition 6. Territory's luck must be at least level 2 fortune. Requirements met. After conquering Lingnan City and Yunnan City, the Dragon of Destiny's cultivation had increased greatly. Not only that, after annexing Lingxi City's luck was also devoured by the Dragon of Destiny. Thus, although the Dragon of Destiny was still a level 2 red dragon, the purple chi had already occupied 3/4 of it. It was about to completely advance to level 3 purple dragon. Fortune was the lowest requirement for a dynasty. Thus, it was included in the basic requirements for a capital city promotion. System notification. Congratulations to player who says that has no clothes. All requirements for establishing Shanghai City have been met. Do you wish to apply for promotion? Yes. System notification. Congratulations to player who says that has no clothes has successfully applied. Starting automatic matching for capital city promotion. System notification. Mission matching complete. Mission 1, Imperial Court Assessment. Accept the assessment of the Dali Imperial Court's officials. The 5 territory indexes, politics, economy, culture, technology, and military, must all be good or above. The first mission made Ouyang Shua's eyebrows twitch. As expected, he couldn't escape this calamity. Dali was currently hostile to Shanghai City. The arrest of the bright moon illuminating the river meant that this silver hand was also secretly instigating the relationship between the Dali Imperial Court and Shanghai City. He really didn't know what would happen if an official from the Dali Imperial Court came to assess Shanghai City. However, the 5 territory indexes were hard targets. It was an important window that reflected the territory's development in various fields. It seemed like Gaia was serious this time. It wasn't willing to just use the numbers on the attribute window to make a fuss. Instead, it wanted to conduct an on-site assessment. There was nothing wrong with this. After all, it was a capital city. Ouyang Shua could understand it being a little more cautious. However, Gaia just had to choose the official from the Dali Imperial Court. This gave Ouyang Shua a headache. If it was the Chuanzhou Imperial Court, Ouyang Shua was confident that he would definitely pass the assessment. But if it was the Dali Imperial Court, it was hard to say. Given that Gaia had always upheld fairness, the officials sent by the Dali Imperial Court naturally didn't dare to abuse their authority and deliberately discredit Shanghai City. However, they could make things difficult for Shanghai City within the limits of the game's rules. Gaia couldn't do anything about it. Perhaps in Gaia's eyes, this matter itself was also a form of training. Mission 236 lines. Within the promoted city, you must have all the trades in the 36 lines. The 36 lines was a general term for the main trades in China's Tang dynasty. It included the meat trade, the palace flower trade, the clothing trade, the jade trade, the jewelry trade, the silk trade, the hemp trade, the jewelry trade, the paper trade, the seafood trade, the fresh fish trade, the stationery trade, the tea trade, the bamboo and wood trade, the wine and rice trade, the ironware trade, the embroidery trade, the needlework trade, the soup trade, the medicine trade, the binding trade, the corner trade, the witchcraft trade, the courier trade, the clay trade, the coffin trade, the leather trade, the antique trade, the sauce trade, the firewood trade, the net trade, the gauze trade, the juggling trade, the colorful trade, the drum and music trade, and the fruit trade. The 36 lines mission was clearly a comprehensive assessment of the city's social structure. If the city couldn't even gather the 36 lines, it naturally wouldn't be worthy of being promoted to a capital city. Ouyang Shua was uncertain when he saw this. As a lord, he didn't dare say that he was familiar with all the 36 lines. Some of the lines had strange names, and Ouyang Shua didn't know what they did. For example, the net trade and the gauze trade left Ouyang Shua dumbfounded. He could only come down and discuss with his subordinates, hoping that there wouldn't be any problems. Mission 3, New Type of Soldier. Create a new type of soldier on top of the current army's foundation. The third mission was a huge disadvantage for Shanghai City. Shanghai City had all 3 armies. They had the Capture Barracks, Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Iron Eagle Swordsmen, Armored Beast Cavalry, and other special soldiers. But the mission requirement was to create a new type of soldier on top of the current army's foundation. If he knew that there would be such a strange mission, Ouyang Shua would have asked Gao Shun to set up the capture barracks later. It was better to let Du Ruhue worry about this mission. System notification. The 3 promotion missions must be completed in order to be promoted. Well, he didn't even have a choice. Compared to the promotion of a county city, the promotion of a capital city wasn't simple. Chapter 823. On the afternoon of March 1st, in Shanghai City. In the Hall of Civil Splendor of the Southern Border Protectorate, Ouyang Shua and the First Minister of the Cabinet, Jiang Shang, as well as Xiao He, Wei Yang, Fan Li, and Du Ruhue, were having a discussion. The topic of discussion was the capital city promotion mission. Upon learning that Shanghai City was going to be promoted to a capital city, the 5 ministers were excited. Once Shanghai City was promoted to become a capital city, It would mean that the establishment of a kingdom was just around the corner. Therefore, no matter how difficult the mission was, they had to give it their all. When he left the main hall in the morning, Ouyang Shua's quest panel had given him a detailed notification of the 3 quests. The Imperial Court examination mission indicated that the examination would take place in the middle of March, but the exact date was not specified. It was very likely that the officials of the Imperial Court would launch a surprise attack or secretly arrive at Shanghai City to conduct an investigation first. Ouyang Shua had already instructed the Mountain Sea Guards to strengthen their surveillance of Shanghai City over the next 2 weeks. If they discovered any suspicious characters, they would immediately report it to the guards. More importantly, Ouyang Shua instructed the 4 division heads, from now on, Shanghai City will enter a state of inspection and be prepared to be assessed at any time. In this way, we won't give the other party an opportunity to take advantage of us. Xiao He and the others were all famous officials with rich experience in battles. Naturally, they knew what the outcome would be if the Great Li Imperial Court sent officials to assess Shanghai City. Thus, they were all on guard and did not dare to be careless. There's still some time. Let's check the loopholes first. Ouyang Shua looked at Jiang Shang and said, 5 days from now, Pavilion Elder Jiang will organize an independent evaluation team to conduct a mock evaluation of Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua, on the other hand, had brought the modern society's way of dealing with superiors' checks into the game. Yes, sir. Since Jiang Shang had agreed to be the Prime Minister of the Cabinet, he quickly got into character. Apart from the Imperial Court's examination, the 36 lines mission also gave Ouyang Shua quite a headache. The task panel clearly stated 36 lines task, degree of completion 35-36. Friendly reminder. After testing, Shanghai City currently does not have Sorcerer's Movement. Please complete it as soon as possible. What does Sorcerer's Movement do? After asking, Ouyang Shua found out that the so-called Sorcerer's Walk was a sorcerer who performed divination. The mountain barbarian tribes had grand warlocks who could divine, but they were not acknowledged by Gaia. This was going to be difficult. According to the rules of the mission, from the moment the mission was accepted, Shanghai City could no longer go to Royal City to recruit talents. Thus, the witch could either rely on Shanghai City to farm refugees, or she could only search the entire territory. Ouyang Shua, on the other hand, decided to use both methods at the same time. He had already summoned all the counties to investigate and see if there were any witches. In the end, Ouyang Shua had no choice but to seek help from the recruitment hall. He wanted to see if he could find a witch during the monthly recruitment of special talents. However, the probability of this happening was too low, and there was only 1 chance per month. He really couldn't put too much hope in it. What Ouyang Shua hated the most was uncertainty. Unfortunately, whether the witch would appear or not was out of his control, which made Shanghai City's path to becoming a capital city even more difficult. As for the last mission, new types of soldiers, Ouyang Shua had already entrusted it to Du Ruhui. After 2 hours of discussion, Ouyang Shua and the 5 ministers made a clear division of labor and made a detailed analysis of the advancement mission. What Ouyang Shua had to do next was to wait patiently. During dinner, Song Jia mentioned something to Ouyang Shua. Wui, the movie The Beauty of the Country, has finished shooting and is currently in post-production. Wu Qingcheng estimates that the movie will be released in late April at the latest. Ouyang Shua drank a mouthful of soup and said, "That's good." The Beauty of the Country would be released 2 months later than in his previous life. This was naturally due to the strong support of Shanghai Entertainment Holdings Group. You have to cooperate during the movie's publicity. Song Jia, however, had a purpose. Ouyang Shua readily agreed. No problem. In a few days, I will write a commentator article on the gaming and entertainment industry for the Daily News and mention this movie in it. Song Jia smiled and said, "That's great. Once you open your mouth, it's better than any publicity." Song Jia's words weren't flattery, but the truth. Ouyang Shua, the strongest lord in the wilderness, had a far-sighted vision. This was a widely recognized fact in the wilderness. It was easy to imagine what kind of heated discussion the article he wrote would cause in the wilderness. Perhaps this would open the curtains to the explosion of the entertainment industry. Shanghai Entertainment Holdings Group, which had long been prepared, took this opportunity to set sail. Song Jia then said one more thing. The movie Hua Tsubing is also in the midst of filming. If it's fast, it should be released in early June. A few days ago, the Imperial Guards had already returned to Shanghai City to rest and reorganize, giving the production team a great deal of convenience. Ouyang Shuo nodded. He was also looking forward to seeing if these two movies would shine even more brilliantly than in his previous life under the influence of someone who had been reborn. "Oh, right," Song Jia suddenly said excitedly. "And he sent me a letter this morning saying that she's preparing to open the Kunlun instance tomorrow. She wants me to rush to Jianye first thing in the morning." The Kunlun instance was a wuxia instance. Xie had won it at the global auction for the high price of 850,000 gold coins. Ouyang Shuo had invested 200,000 gold coins in it to get a spot for Song Jia. Seeing his wife's excited expression, Ouyang Shuo smiled and said, "Then go. I will have Tianqi arrange for people to secretly protect you. After all, it's the first wuxia instance. It should be very interesting." "I think so too." Song Jia was full of anticipation. After learning about the instance, she had specially crammed on the internet to read the original work. She had read it from beginning to end 4 times. Not to mention anything else, just the martial arts secret manuals and divine weapons in the novels were enough to make people salivate with desire. The husband and wife talked as they finished their dinner. "Let's not talk about this for now." March 2nd, Jiangnan Province, Zhoushan Port. At about 4 p.m., a sail-powered battleship with the Statue of Liberty hanging over it slowly docked at the port. It was the battleship from Freedom City that had just left Japan. On the dock, Di Chun, Lord Chunshin, Xiongba, Wolf Warrior, Military Kill Ripper, and Wandering Huan were all present. The others were quite excited. Only Wandering Huan had a somewhat complicated expression. Before the battle for the satellite town, Wandering Huan had only found out that behind the families of Xiongba and the others was a mysterious organization called the Silver Hand. This had made him quite shocked. Under Xiongba's persuasion, Wandering Huan finally accepted the Silver Secret Order, but he felt uneasy. According to the style of the Silver Hand, everything was done to protect the interests of the aristocratic families. If in the future national war, the national interests and the interests of the Silver Hand conflicted, what choice would Di Chun and the others make? At the thought of this, Wandering Huan shuddered a little. Cooperating with Di Chun and the others was tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin, which made Wandering Huan tremble with fear. It was just that he had already boarded the warship of the Yan Huang Alliance and could no longer get off. During the battle for the satellite town, Wandering Huan had an intuitive understanding of the power of the Silver Hand. Now that the First Lord of the United States had sent the core technology from thousands of miles away, he was even more surprised. Just as Wandering Huan was in a daze, the sail-powered battleship had stopped and a ladder was lowered from the battleship. 2 Americans, 1 civil and 1 military, walked in the front, followed by a group of soldiers armed with guns. When Di Chun and the others saw them, they greeted them with a smile. What followed was naturally a welcoming dinner, and then the transaction that had been booked was carried out. The moment Di Chun received the 3 technical manuals from the clerk of the Free City, his hands trembled a little. With these 3 treasures, the technological advantage of Shanghai City would be gone. In addition, Di Chun had already thought about using these 3 things to write a good article, and then take Shanghai City down a notch. The next morning, the battleship set off and left. Di Chun and the others did not leave. Although they drank with the 2 Americans yesterday and almost didn't sleep for the whole night, they were all in high spirits and simply held a temporary alliance meeting in Overlord City. In addition to discussing how to set up a trap for Shanghai City, there was another agenda, which was about instigating the dragon-seeking acupoints. Xiongba admitted that he had made decisive progress. The big gift sent by Jack was a fatal blow to Xiongba. Xiongba looked around and said, The old fox is very stingy and only authorized the weaving machine manufacturing technology to the dragon-seeking acupoints. The rest of the steam engine, warship, and other technologies were all blocked. This made the dragon-seeking acupoints very dissatisfied, and they held a grudge. Think about it. If we use these 3 technical authorizations as bargaining chips, do we still have to worry about that kid not obediently giving in? Zhang Lang was honest and asked in confusion, but once these 3 technologies are authorized in our territories, it will break through the limit of 5 technical authorizations. This technology will naturally be popularized in the China region. Xiongba smiled, and there was indescribable slyness in his smile. So, we can delay the internal authorization of the technology. When the dragon-seeking acupoints is reversed, it won't be too late to authorize the internal authorization. As long as both sides sign the agreement in black and white, even if the dragon-seeking acupoints finds out that they have been tricked, there is no way out. Wandering, who was at the side, heard this and felt a faint chill in his heart. These aristocratic children were indeed experts in playing tricks. If they really did this, they would be forcing the dragon-seeking acupoints to the road of death. Thinking about it, Wandering felt sad for the dragon-seeking acupoints. Why bother? You fell out with Shanghai City because of a small matter. Now, you have built a relationship with the Yanhuang Alliance, but they are digging a hole for you. It really is one wrong step, and you will fall into a bottomless abyss. Wandering, however, secretly warned himself in his heart that he could not do the next dragon-seeking acupoints. This is a good idea. Lord Chunshin and the rest agreed. They were not very interested in counteracting the dragon-seeking acupoints, and it was Xiongba who was actively working on it. But if they could use this kind of getting something for nothing method to take down the dragon-seeking acupoints, they naturally would not reject it. At the very least, it would be good to discuss their mortal enemy. Xiongba was overjoyed and said, "Then it's settled. Don't worry, I will get it done as soon as possible." Chapter 824. 5th of March, Overlord City. In a secret room of the City Lord's mansion, Xiongba and Dragon searching Acupoint were negotiating. They chose to negotiate in Overlord City to avoid Shanghai City's eyes. 2 days ago, the confidants of both sides had held 4 rounds of secret negotiations and basically finalized the cooperation. The two were now talking face to face to make the final confirmation. Dragon searching Acupoint spoke first. After leaving Shanghai Alliance and joining Yanhuang Alliance, I want the same treatment and status as Wandering Huan. As the only civilian player lord in Yanhuang Alliance, Wandering Huan had become the benchmark for other grassroots lords to work with Yanhuang Alliance. If Wandering Huan knew about this, what would he think? Okay. Xiongba nodded in agreement. Dragon searching Acupoint continued. If the matter is exposed and Shanghai City sends troops to attack Dragon searching City, you have the obligation to send troops to help. No excuses are allowed. This is also included in the agreement. According to the secret cooperation agreement between the two, Dragon Searching City was not in a hurry to defect to Yanhuang Alliance. Firstly, this could paralyze Shanghai City, and secondly, they could spy on Shanghai City secrets. For Dragon Searching Acupoint, if it worked well, it could even take both sides. Yanhuang Alliance wasn't in a hurry either. Although Silverhand agreed to help, it was too far away. For the time being, they could only cut off Shanghai City's wings and shorten the gap between Yanhuang Alliance and Shanghai City. After Dragon Searching Acupoint rebelled and mastered the relevant technology, not only would Overlord City have to build a new Navy fleet, Battle Wolves would also have to build a Navy in the East Sea Province's Haizhou port, and Dichan would train the Navy in the Zhili Province's Haijin port. Even Lord Chunshin, who was inland, would have to build a navy on the Yangtze River. In this way, Yanhuang Alliance would be able to control the Bohai Sea, Yellow Sea, and even the East Sea, forming a north-south confrontation with Shanghai City's navy. In addition, Yanhuang Alliance would also start the industrialization of their territory. With the deep foundation of the aristocratic families and their rich talent pool, they would not be too far behind Shanghai City. However, all of this needed time. Therefore, Yanhuang Alliance did not want to have a direct conflict with Shanghai City before they were sure. It was undoubtedly the best choice to set up an ambush in the alliance of mountains and seas. Xiongba replied with a smile, "Of course, that's for sure. We're allies, so we definitely won't leave you in the lurch. Besides, if Shanghai City were to take over Minnan Province, they would be facing my Jiangnan Province. Tell me, would I allow Shanghai City to have their way and do nothing?" Xiongba's reply made dragon-seeking Acupoint speechless. Even though he was a stubborn person, deep in his heart, he was still fearful of Shanghai City. If it wasn't for the Yanhuang Alliance and the Silver Hand supporting him, he would never dare to have the idea of betrayal. The dragon-seeking acupuncture point continued. If we withdraw from the Mountain and Sea Alliance in the future, the Bank of the Four Seas will definitely cut off our loans to Dragon-Seeking City. In that case, my Dragon-Seeking City will collapse, and Huitong Bank will take over the loan. That's not a problem. Xiongba readily agreed and lightly said, "Do you have any other requests?" Xuanlong Acupoint Master's expression froze. He understood Xiongba's unspoken words, "Don't push your luck." After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Should I go and persuade the Siege Lion? He's my good brother." "How confident are you?" Xiongba asked. "At least 50%. Xiongba shook his head. "If you don't have full confidence, don't talk about instigating defection. You'd better remove this idea from your mind. Don't you know better than me what kind of opponent Wu Yi is? Don't alert them." Hearing this, dragon-seeking Acupoint looked a little depressed. Xiongba suddenly smiled and patted Xuanlong's shoulder, saying, "Well, don't be discouraged. With Hand of Silver as a backing, there will always be a time to incite the Siege Lion." The Seeking Dragon Acupuncture Point nodded. Seeing this, Xiongba said, "Since we have reached an agreement, there is no need to test each other. Let's sign the cooperation agreement so that you can get the technology authorization earlier, right?" Taking a deep breath, Xuanlong Acupoint expelled all distracting thoughts from his mind and said, "Sign it." At this moment, there was no turning back for Xuanlong Acupoint Master. On the 6th of March, the lords of the China server were dumbfounded by the 3 consecutive system notifications. System notification. Steam engine manufacturing technology has been authorized to more than 5 territories in the China server, officially becoming a common technology in the wilderness. Congratulations to all lords. System notification. Weaving machine manufacturing technology has been authorized to more than 5 territories in the China server, officially becoming a common technology in the wilderness. Congratulations to all lords. System notification. Sailing battleship manufacturing technology has been authorized to more than 5 territories in the China server, officially becoming a common technology in the wilderness. Congratulations to all lords. The lords subconsciously thought that Shanghai City had opened up these 3 key technologies to the public. Almost at the same time, Yanhuang Alliance made a joint statement on the forums, saying that they had spent a large sum of money to purchase these 3 core technologies from America, and that they had licensed them to the lords of the China server for free in order to break through the technological barriers of the China server and increase the overall strength of the China server. In the statement, Yanhuang Alliance claimed to be the leader of the China server. In order to increase the strength of the China server and gain an advantage in the future wars, they had put in a lot of effort. They did not forget to secretly mock Shanghai City, hinting that Shanghai City was too selfish, obtaining advanced technology from the West early on, but keeping it to themselves, not knowing how to share it with the other lords. This time, Yanhuang Alliance had taken a moral high ground. In order to increase their credibility, Yanhuang Alliance even posted the relevant photos on the forums. The evidence was conclusive. Seeing this, the lords immediately fell silent. Yanhuang Alliance, smooth, was beautiful, turning the technology that was originally going to be forcefully promoted by Gaia into their merit. Those who did not know better would have thought that Yanhuang Alliance was some kind of lay foam. The wilderness lords were not idiots. They could roughly understand the logic behind this. However, understanding was one thing. They had benefited greatly from this incident. It was indisputable. Yanhuang Alliance. As criticism of Shanghai City, in the eyes of the wilderness lords, was naturally reasonable. That's right. Why did Yanhuang Alliance share the technology so generously? Why did Shanghai City obtain the technology earlier and treat their allies differently? Isn't it because they wanted to prevent the spread of technology? This time, Shanghai City would not be able to clear their name even if they jumped into the Yellow River. If it wasn't for the fact that there were less than 100 wilderness lords after the previous battles, Shanghai City would have become the target of public criticism. With the battle for the satellite cities, as well as this technology licensing incident, Yanhuang Alliance played a beautiful public relations game, turning around the disadvantageous situation after the Battle of Yunnan. And the root of all of this was Silverhand. Regarding this matter, Shanghai City maintained a rare silence. This slap to the face was indeed painful. Ouyang Shuan never thought that Yanhuang Alliance would be able to obtain these core technologies so quickly. He didn't want to spread these 3 technologies in China too early, so he was wary of Yanhuang Alliance. This was because Ouyang Shuan knew that once Yanhuang Alliance grasped these core technologies, based on their talent pool, Shanghai City would have no advantage in this industrial competition. In the end, the development of the situation was out of Ouyang Shua's control, resulting in the current situation. In the government circles, there was a saying, favorable wind and unfavorable wind. It was said that once a person was unfavorable, 100 times would be unfavorable. Ouyang Shua was wondering if Shanghai City had encountered such a low point. I need to stay calm, Ouyang Shua thought. The more it was at this time, the more he couldn't panic. With Shanghai City's strength, as long as Ouyang Shua didn't make a mistake, the opponent wouldn't be able to do anything to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua was only surprised, but someone was already flustered and exasperated. This person was naturally dragon-seeking acupuncture point. Dragon-seeking acupuncture point, the mayor's mansion. When dragon-seeking acupuncture point heard the system notification, he was stunned for a moment, unable to react. After a while, a sense of shame and anger from being fooled uncontrollably burst forth from the bottom of his heart. F***CK, a bunch of bastards. Xuanlong Acupoint was so angry that he flew into a rage in the study. He threw vases, inkstones, scrolls, and other things everywhere. Xiongba, I'm not done with you. Dragon-seeking acupuncture point's eyes were bloodshot, wanting to argue with Xiongba. But as soon as he stepped out of the room, he reacted and his face instantly turned pale. The cooperation agreement had already been signed. What would he do to Xiongba now? Fight to the death. The biggest possibility was that the fish would die, but the net wouldn't break. Dragon-seeking acupuncture point had just stepped out of the door, but he slowly retracted his foot. One day, dragon-seeking acupuncture point locked himself in the study, refusing to see anyone. Even when the maids brought him lunch, they were chased away by him in exasperation. The entire chancellor's mansion trembled in fear, shrouded in a terrifying atmosphere. And all of this fell into the eyes of those who were observant. Shanghai City, Southern Border Protectorate Manor. In the study, Ouyang Shua had a complicated expression as he asked, "Have you confirmed the information?" Shun Buhai, the commander of the Shanghai Guards, who was sitting below him, replied, "Yes." During this period, Dragon-Seeking City and Overlord City have been flirting with each other, and the people from both sides have been meeting frequently. And just yesterday, Dragon-Seeking Acupuncture Point left alone. When he returned to Dragon-Seeking City again, his expression was obviously different. Coupled with his abnormal behavior today, I suspect that the worst situation has already happened. When Dragon-Seeking Acupuncture Point shouted Xiongba, it was clearly heard by the people outside the door. Ouyang Shua nodded. As early as when Dragon-Seeking Acupuncture Point threw a tantrum and contacted a third party, Ouyang Shuo had been guarding against dragon-seeking city. When the Battle of Chibi ended, he even made a comprehensive emergency plan. He just didn't expect this day to come so soon. Is it Silverhand again? Such a thought flashed across Ouyang Shuo's mind. This was probably the only factor that could make dragon-seeking acupuncture points so determined. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.